Well, howdy y'all. It's me, Matthew McConaughey. Just kidding, it's me Luna Sizemore. If you recognize my name from the family tree, that's because you're a liar. We're back for another Just the Content Carnival, and it's our meatiest Maude season yet. So let's get into season 6.
Does she appear a lot in season 6? Because she's in this episode. She casts a big shadow over this episode, even though she's physically not in it very much, foreshadowing her post-death appearances.
Yes, from the kind of list I have that I think is incomplete because it doesn't include any background things for now, but season 6 and season 8 are the ones that she's in the most.
Nice.
So
well,
I think we're going to see a lot of her.
I, for one, look forward to learning more little nuggets, just like the last one you uncovered last time with the ice cream. Whew. Now.
Yeah.
First up, it's season 6 episode 1, Bard of Darkness, written by Dan McGrath, directed by Jim Reardon, aired September 4th, 1994. Bake it away, toys.
Bard, he's got injured somewhere in a pool-related incident. I remember this episode. It was one of my favorites. It's Millpool. It's the Millpool episode, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's a Rear Window parody, which is a Hitchcock movie, where I guess Jimmy Stewart witnesses a murder from his back window, but he's somewhat powerless to do anything about it until he gets kind of caught up in it a little bit. To be honest, I don't remember what happens in that movie. Bart's got his leg in a cast and he hears a high-pitched scream, so he grabs his telescope just in time to look across from his bedroom window straight into a window that has suddenly appeared on the side of Flanders' house, and he sees Neddy, who put his hands to his head and shouts, "Oh my God, I've killed her. What have I done?" And he glances around very suspiciously and pulls the blind down.
Yeah, she does cast a dark shadow over this episode, and I thought this was the first. We've already talked about the Maude death thing, so it's the second of the many. You know, Maude dies before she dies, because they sort of play at this episode like, you know, Maude couldn't possibly have been killed. Like, it's more that Ned couldn't have killed her, but the whole sort of, you know, the fallback you have in this episode at this point is, well, obviously, like, they haven't killed Maude off. There's going to be some kind of reason that she's away. Like, it was always, they weren't kidding anybody.
It would be very unlikely that it would have turned out that Ned had brutally murdered Maude and had blood all over his hands, and then at the end he was like arrested and turned into like a sideshow Bob, because murder, it's played for laughs, but you can't actually do it, really.
Yeah, no, it would have sort of soured the whole setup. For now, Bart fully, you know, but he's just reacting to what he sees. Like, it'd be hard for him to think anything else in this moment. So, yeah, not a lot to say.
So Bart, with his telescope, which now seems to have some kind of microphone attached because he can clearly hear what the people on the other end of the telescope are saying, we see Todd say, "Where's Mummy? We miss her," which is nice of him. And Mommy has to go away. She's with God now, says Ned. More of that sinister Ned that we've seen 3 or 4 times, where Ned will say something that is, I guess in this case, it's not really sinister. It's just totally misinterpreted. But we've seen a couple of times where Ned said something sinister. The writers deliberately make it so that he's saying things that make him seem more sinister than he actually is. And Ned's looking guilty at that time. Todd leaps for joy, and Rod, with his fists clenched, out, "Yes!" I assume because they like the fact that she's with God now.
Yeah, again, sort of a dark foreshadowing for when, you know. And they said as well in the, like, talking about the episode where Maude dies, they originally did have a scene where Ned talks to Rod and Todd about it, but they said it just kept playing as really sad, so they got rid of it. So this is sort of the only inkling we have to what that conversation looked like, and it's nice to see that they're somewhat on board with it. They don't, you know, like, they know she's with God, but in the context of this episode, there's no reason for him to phrase it like this or look so sad.
Well, it's all context, isn't it? And how much of it is viewed through the skewed eyes of Bart Simpson? How much of it is an unreliable narrator?
Yeah, true.
Hmm.
But Rod and Todd, luckily, again, which is why it made Maude a good character to kill off if they were going to do it, because Rod and Todd take a lot of comfort in knowing that she's with God.
Yes, and as sad as it was, can you imagine if they'd just taken that clip and just spliced it in right after Maude died?
Yeah, it would have made them look somewhat heartless.
It would have made them look heartless. It would have been absolutely horrific.
Yes.
But because we know she's not dead, it's okay. So I guess context is everything.
Yeah, that's it.
Somewhat agitated, Bart, in his bed. Now, he hasn't slept for a while, you can see from the anxiety. He's got big bags under his eyes. All the family gathered around his bed for some reason. And Bart shouts, Ned Flanders murdered his wife. But why? asks Homer, concerned, before immediately becoming a sleazebag and wiggling his fingers like he does when he's about to eat a treat. And he says, she's such a fox. Marge is not happy with his statement at all. We're not sure why, whether it's because of the skimming over the murderness or the being hot for Maudie. But anyway, Marge is not happy with this. She's not forgotten what happened a few months ago at that party. And apparently in Homer's book, foxiness alone is a reason not to be murdered.
That's good. That's nice of him, but in a way. But I like that, Marge doesn't have time for it. Marge is, first of all, he's saying it about a woman that might be dead. That's probably what Marge's main problem is, because I don't think Marge is overly, she knows Homer's a simple guy. You know, he's easily pleased. So I don't think the fact that he finds Maude Flanders attractive really bothers her too much. And but I think it's more the fact that Homer's just called this potentially. You know, she might be laying next door, you know, like dead she might be dead in the garden. He's calling her a fox. As we find out later, is the fact that she dies doesn't stop him from doing that anyway. So,
well, you know, death to Homer Simpson shouldn't stop somebody from being a fox. As Disco Stew also, you know, backs up when he calls her a foxy dead disco chick or whatever he calls her. So it seems like,
and Mo,
yeah.
we haven't got into the whole Mo and Maude thing, that comes later, but Mo's very disrespectful at the funeral.
It doesn't seem, to be honest, like Maude being dead has really knocked any of her suitors off their stride.
No, I believe Mo says to Ned, if it was you that had died, I would have been on her so fast.
Yes, I do remember that one, but let's not give too much away for season 11 because it's still season 6. So we see now the action's hotting up and we see Bart crawling across the attic of the Flanders house for whatever reason. I'm guessing it's the Flanders house. Pointing at Ned and shouting, I'm going to stop you from murdering Lisa like you murdered your wife. Ned cannot believe what he's hearing. He clenches his fists up next to his face like a little girl and shouts, murder, and then faints very dramatically.
Yeah. I like Ned's sort of like whimpering is one of his best qualities. Like he has a lot of like little girl reactions to things, which is very very fun. The whole like I was gonna send it to you, but it's like 2 minutes long and nothing to do with Maude. But the whole lead up to this is like Lisa breaking into the house and she thinks she finds Maude's head in the fridge, but it's just a head of lettuce. And then she goes to the attic. But Flanders, they play him the most terrifying. Like he's genuinely quite scary in that he just comes into the house singing, like under his breath, sort of slowly singing a hymn, carrying an axe for no reason. And Lisa's like hiding. She runs up to the attic. And he comes up, like raises the axe over his head and says, it's time to put you away for good. And then they both scream. And then he just puts the axe back in where it's supposed to go.
Ominous. So they really, really like playing up that side of Ned. And I wish they'd have done that with Maude a little bit more. They could have made her ominous as well, but apparently they didn't feel that was necessary. They just kept her with being, you know, terse with people. So
yeah, it didn't fit in with her vanilla aesthetic.
Maybe not. We cut to the front lawn and Maude is back with the family and Police Chief Wiggum, relation, And that other cop that's not Lou, and they're all in the garden, and the other cop's taking notes, and Bart says, murder, murder. And I can't read my own notes here. It says, murder. Maude says that... Maude says, murder? No, I've just been in the country for a week. She doesn't seem overly fussed that people are throwing these murder accusations around at all.
No, she seems like she's probably had a nice week in the country and she's in a quite relaxed state of mind. I wonder what she means by the country, though, because to me that means she went home to the sort of countryside of Fargo.
Of Springfield Township, North Dakota, where we believe she was born and raised.
Yes.
What's the name of that other cop? Does he have a name?
Eddie.
Eddie, yes, he does, doesn't he? So Bart says, but I distinctly heard you say that Maude was with God. This is when we get one of Maude's only classic lines. I was at Bible camp learning how to be more judgmental. And then she takes a little bit of a glance at Ned. So Ned got his classic line of breathe through your damn mouth last week. And this week, Maude gets her classic line of, I've been at Bible camp learning to be more judgmental.
Yeah, this seems to be this is the quote that you saw of doing any kind of Simpson like book, or anything with Maude where it's got a little speech bubble. This tends to be the thing that she's saying. This sort of apparently seemed to sum her up the most, but I don't think it does because I think she's already way too judgmental.
She's weirdly switches between not being judgmental at all or outwardly, as in like not appearing to give a crap, and then just being incredibly judgmental and harsh, like when she says that her kids are not allowed sugar and anyone even bringing sugar near them is wrong.
Yeah, she supported Marge going to prison.
Oh, that as well.
So
yeah.
Marge is standing there listening to this woman tell her that she's just been away because she needed to learn how to be more judgmental. And she keeps her cool about it.
Yeah, it's almost as if she'd forgotten. It's almost as if that was an alternative timeline where that didn't happen. Or Marge Simpson is a very, very forgiving woman.
Or this happened before that.
Oh, we're in some kind of cyclical time where episodes don't actually happen in the order that we see them in. Good Lord. Let's not even get into that here. We saw the murder and I saw you bury the corpse in the backyard. Bart points an accusatory finger. Ned breaks down. It's true. I am a murderer. And everyone's shocked.
They don't show Maude's reaction to him saying, I am a murderer. They show, like, Wiggum and Homer and Bart, I think, but not Maude.
That's true. Yes. But they do in a second go back to her when Ned finishes and he says her favorite ficus plant. Is that right? Am I saying that right? And I buried the remains in the garden. And then we do see Maude gasp for a second.
Yeah.
And because Ned says, I was hoping to replace the tree before you got home. And then we see Maude gasp with her arms folded. But she refrains from any harsh judgment, knowing that Ned hasn't finished yet. And Ned, but then Ned says, he didn't have time to replace it or whatever lame excuse he doesn't even bother to come up with. But she smiles and takes his hand, very forgiving, and therefore it seems the camp failed.
Yeah, she looks, she makes kind of a nice little loving noise as well. Like, I believe her in this moment that she forgives him. So, yeah, she's failed her mission of being more judgmental for now. She seems to have come back really zen. And there is always the possibility that she lied about where she went. For all we know, she went to an ice cream factory.
That's right. You should check her tummy and see if it's bulging full of ice cream before. Maybe she went to a Zen Buddhist retreat, but being an evangelical Christian, she couldn't admit it. Maybe she was cheating on big boy Jesus. Maybe. So they're still holding hands when Bart says, I heard a woman scream. And Ned says, that I cannot explain. And we see some slight concern on Maude Flanders' face. And then Lou rocks up with a dead plant. and he says, I found this, or I found the victim, or whatever. And then we hear Ned doing his very, very girly scream. And Bart says, well, that explains everything.
Yeah. Again, like Ned's scream. This is something they kind of kept consistent, weirdly. Like there's some things that they do remember, like minor details like this that crop up again and again. And yeah, it's just funny. It's just funny. Subjectively, objectively.
Objectively, it's incongruous with his normal voice. And
Yes.
very funny.
It's the same duality as him having that sort of, like sticking out dad belly with his jumper on and then being completely ripped with his jumper off.
Yes.
There's a second where Maude, and Luke comes back and says, I've found whatever. And yeah, she does look for a second concerned, like, oh, what if he has killed somebody?
But why is she not bothered about him killing her favourite plant and not even being bothered to go to the shop and buy another one?
Again, I think maybe this might have all happened relatively quickly, but Lisa breaks into the house because Ned leaves with Rod and Todd to take them somewhere, comes back alone. So he obviously could have been out and bought it then, and he didn't. So, but in his defense, he does just say, I was hoping to replace it before you got back, which isn't really a commitment.
Hope ain't going to get you anywhere in this game, is it? Where would one go to buy a plant in Springfield? We know where you might buy a slushie, where you might buy comic books, but where would one buy a plant?
I don't know, actually. I don't think we've seen like botanical gardens and stuff, I think, but I can't remember them going to like a Bent's, for example.
A garden centre or a florist or a home furnishing place.
Yes.
None of those. You think
maybe you have to order them in?
Really? Weird. Springfield's like big enough to have all that stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm sure somebody secretly owns a garden centre that we don't know about.
Homer Simpson is not happy with this explanation, and he rushes in with his arms folded in detective mode, poking his face into everyone else's face and says, there's still the little matter of the whereabouts of your wife, he says, with his back to Maude. And Maude sweetly kind of wiggles her fingers and says, I'm right here, like, kind of cute, in a relaxed kind of way. Homer turns around and thrusts his face towards her. Oh, so I see everything is wrapped up in a neat little package. Maude's brow at this point knits and she begins to scowl at Homer, while everyone else basically stares blankly at him. And Homer points out that he would. I'm sorry if it sounded sarcastic. I meant that. And I want to point out though that while Maude continues to scowl, I feel this is kind of American humor. If it was British humor, I don't think Homer would have had to point out that line about, oh, I meant that. I'm sorry if it sounded sarcastic. I don't think they'd say that in a British show. I think he would just say the line and then everyone would know what was going on.
Yeah, maybe. It's sort of explaining what we already know. But that's just sort of a Homer thing to do. He sort of doesn't understand what's going on in terms of, like definitions for things. One of my favorites is, I think Lisa says to him once, do you even know what rhetorical means? And he says, do I know what rhetorical means? Which is good.
The joke, right?
Yeah, it's comedy. But he basically also spits in a face with the word package. And I don't think he was being sarcastic either. I think he was just being rude to her.
He's rude.
I think he sort of, the whereabouts of your wife. Yeah. The whereabouts of your wife, I'm right here. I think he knew at that point, he was like, oh, okay, I've just made a mistake here. But he thought, I'm going to run with it. I'm just going to keep being rude to her. And then he looked around and realized that everybody had noticed. So he needed a way out.
He's not bothered.
She handled it.
He's not bothered if he's rude to Maude. He doesn't care in the slightest.
No. And she sort of handles it pretty well.
It's a tense relationship between.
He just scowls. There isn't really. Yeah. But again, she's been away to this fake Bible camp. So she's very chilled out, this whole sequence. Nothing riles her.
Nothing riles her. She's really, and she just brushes it all off. Ha ha ha! You thought my husband had murdered me. Hey, don't be so silly.
Yeah.
As she probably should, to be honest. She probably should be like, what, are you people insane? Are all of you people mad? Get off my front lawn. Because my husband, made a noise in his room. This is like some preposterous sitcom setup.
Yeah. And I would be, if I was Maude, I would be annoyed that, I can't even go away for a week without this family accusing my husband of murdering me. Like, even when I'm away, they're a problem for me. But again, she just doesn't seem to mind.
Doesn't seem to mind. There's no, I don't hear those conversations in the Flanders house of like, we should move. We should move. We got this house at a good deal from Jasper the pastor, but we should just get the heck out of here.
Yeah. And they do. They do at one point. But they seem to be, like, Ned is sad to be saying bye to Homer, and again, Homer just does not care.
Good Lord. What are we going to do with you, Homer J? Anyway, that was a good, quite a feast of Maude-related flotsam and jetsam there. We managed to get a good 30 minutes of chat out of that. So I enjoyed that, Nathan. Shall we move on?
Yes, let's do it.
Next, it's Season 6, Episode 7, Bart's Girlfriend. Written by Jonathan Collier. Directed by Susie Dieter. Aired November 6, 1994. And featuring the inimitable Meryl Streep as Jessica Lovejoy. A Streep/Roswell combo? Sign me the F up.
We are in church, and Bart he's in like basically a cage in church like Hannibal Lecter. And we can just see glimmers of Maude behind the family. The Flanders family sat behind the Simpsons. Lisa gets up to read an offering or read like something from the Bible or whatever, a reading. And she gets on a bit of a rant about how people have judged Bart without any proof. And she knows that basically some money's gone missing, right? She knows that Jessica Lovejoy's stolen it. And so Lisa urges the criminal to come forward. And first up, Skinner gives up that he smelled some weed smoke when he was in Nam. Then Grandpa claims that he cancelled Star Trek. Hibbert claims he left his keys inside someone. And during a few clips of this, we can just see the motionless back of Maude's head. She's not reacting. She's just sitting, staring stony face towards the front, possibly grinning inanely as we know that she does it from time to time. Again, yes.
Yeah. I wonder what Maude would have confessed if she felt the urge, and I wonder if she came close to doing what Skinner, Grandpa, and Hibbert did.
Oh, great question, and much in keeping with the secret thing that we were talking about before. Maybe there's a burning Maude secret that this was her chance, but she was chopped off by those three superstars before she got the chance. Would you like to conjecture what she would have splurted out?
Yes. If I was writing it as a Simpsons writer and I chose Maude and I wanted it to be something along those same lines, I think I would go for something like, I hate my children.
Yes, something along those lines are, basically, I'm
unhappy.
But basically, I want to watch this town burn.
Yeah.
Something like this. Something where she would let out that dark secret we've hinted at that says, like, to be honest, she's as happy, if not more happy, when when shit's hitting the fan.
Yeah, so I think that would be one of the I hate this town, maybe.
I hate all of you and hope
Yes.
you all burn in hell, which I know you will do.
Yeah.
We come back to Lisa, and Lisa says, "Judge not, lest you be judged." And we do. You see, it shows Lisa from the back, and it pans out across the entire church, and we see another candidate for the worst Maude drawing ever. You just see a little bit underneath Lisa's arm, and again, it's like you can't. She's one of those characters that if you don't draw her right, it does look incredibly amateurish. I'm sure it's the same for most characters, but it seems like they can get away with a sketch of most characters and they're passable. But if you don't actually draw Maude with the right proportions. It just looks like a splodge with she just looks like a froggy splodge.
Yeah, she looks kind of like she's been drawn in another TV show, like Bob's Burgers or something along those lines.
She does look more like a Bob's Burgers character, definitely. And I wonder, we do the Maud art section. I wonder whether we should have been collecting these. I've collected a couple, but it would be great if we go back through and find the 10 worst Maud drawings as a segment in one of these episodes, because there's some real humdingers. Anyway,
Maybe that'll be the season 2 finale special bonus clip.
Could well be.
It wasn't.
So Lisa is trying to get Jessica to give her game away, but she's stone-faced. So Maud's sitting there, hands clasped in front of her again, just kind of staring blankly at the front. She doesn't seem to find this of any interest whatsoever. This emotional roller coaster that the Simpsons family on is water off a duck's back to Maud, especially after she's been through fires and car chases and serial killers on their trail. So this kind of this little bit of cash gone missing, it means nothing to her. So no. Maud's sitting there with her stone-faced duck face, and Lisa shouts, "If you search her room," this is talking about Jessica Lovejoy, "you'll find the money." And Homer immediately jumps to his feet and shouts, "To the little girl's room." Maud begins to look concerned at this. We're not sure why, but in a second she flips and she is angry.
Yes.
She's angered, and she immediately gets to her feet and follows Homer and the mob. Maud loves a mob. She loves a mob. We see her front and center in this. We see her front and center in this small child's bedroom as Mo is using some kind of machinery to lift up the mattress rather than doing it with his arms. Maud, in classic Maud mode of just standing with her arms next to her and just kind of leaning forward. She does this weird kind of like arms by her side, but leaning forward. And then they lift up the bed to see the cash. And again, Maud's gone, nowhere to be seen. She loves the mob. She likes getting right in there. And then you look around and she's done one back in her house doing some knitting or whatever.
This might be the quickest. We've seen her at the town meetings, and then later on she's not been involved. This is the quickest turnaround for her because she is involved. She's in that she's in that first bit when they find the money, and then you don't see her again in the room at all.
No, so what normally would have happened is that she would have been in the church, she would have run along, but she would have never got to the place they were going. She would have gone somewhere else, and then you wouldn't have seen her again for the entire episode. But this time she actually made it to the place. But literally, as soon as Mo lifted up that mattress and saw the money, she must have been, okay, that's enough for me, I'm gone. And she just left. She said she got all of the goodness of the bad feelings and the judgment, but she managed to get out before anyone, before she had to do anything that might require her to actually invest any energy or emotions in this.
Maybe. I have one speculation about this whole sort of scene.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's Jessica Lovejoy, who is Meryl Streep, by the way, and I think this is one of the best voice guests where you just can't tell who it is. It's not very noticeable that it's Meryl Streep.
Streep is very good, though. I've seen it. Streep as Thatcher and Streep as... Is The Devil Wears Prada? Is that Streep?
Yes. Not
only does she have an awesome name, Streep, she's a great actor in my book. Now, I'm no judge of actors. I'm not saying that I run some kind of high-level acting school. I don't. But just as a layman, I'll give her a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, agreed. The matter at hand, though, I imagine that Maud already, given that it's, the Lovejoy's daughter, I imagine that she already knows how problematic she is because, she'd already been sent off to boarding school. She comes back now because she's expelled. Don't really know what happens to her after this. I think she just kind of sticks around and just doesn't speak. But, I think Maud would already know all of this information, which is why she doesn't really have a reaction to it. But then, again, she jumps on the on the mob sort of bandwagon because she loves to do that, and she's very she's very sort of like swept up in all the mob rule sort of thing every time. But I also think that maybe she was with Helen somewhere else in the house, as I don't think we see Helen either.
To be honest, it would be suspicious had Helen run along and got in there while a mob, Helen would be more likely to say, how dare you, let us look and make this decision rather than letting the entire mob go in. And it leads me to thinking, Maude's friends, air quotes, friends with Helen Lovejoy. We know from her diary that she has no respect for Helen Lovejoy, but how does Maude feel now and think about Lovejoy, especially in relation to Lovejoy's children?
Well, I think the way that I just called Maude Homer, that's a new one.
That's 2 coins at least.
Yeah.
Double ka-ching.
I think the way that Maude feels about that and Lisa is nothing in comparison to the way she feels about Jessica Lovejoy. Because again, that in this episode is proven to sort of be much nicer and more moral than Jessica Lovejoy. So I think Maude will just, the way she judges Marge's parenting skills, I imagine she really doubles down on Helen's, given that Jessica is a rip.
She is. She's a bleeding little rip. She is, and I think it's a weird one because if she really respected Helen and the Reverend Lovejoy, she would have been shocked and she would have been perplexed by this. But you've got a bit of a feeling that she's kind of tutting to herself and saying, "Yeah, of course." What would you expect from those 2 hypocrites not even raising their child, sending that child away to boarding school? Like we said, we've entertained the idea that maybe Maude is homeschooling the boys at some point so they get a real education, because we only see them pop up in schools occasionally. So she would probably come down very hard on a family who decided to send their kid away.
Yes. Let's keep in mind that only a few weeks ago in our time, but it could have been days, it could have been years for Maude, did she tell Ned that the church was a house of love and forgiveness?
She did, but first of all, she probably didn't mean that. She's probably just saying it. Second of all, she did not mean that the Lovejoys represented that. And she clearly seems to feel that although she has a strong Christian faith and love of God, though somewhat hard to understand, she does not seem to have a lot of respect. We haven't seen any respect for the Lovejoys. To be honest, she has very little respect for anyone at all. But she's certainly not displayed any respect for the Lovejoy family.
Yeah, I can't think of a person we've seen her really display any kind of just consistent respect for. The closest might possibly be Mr. Burns, but she still doesn't know that he's secretly filming her eating ice cream. We
got to assume at this point the amount of times she's seen Burns do despicable stuff that off camera she does not hold him in high regard. Although, people will perplex you with these sometimes. Right now there's I don't know if you follow world politics, but in a big country, one of the biggest, they have a president. Call him a president, not prime ministers. And this chap's kind of a controversial chap. He says a lot of silly things. And he's not well respected in many places. And yet, lots and lots of people think that chap's doing a great job and should be given another few years to kind of get his hands in those pies. So sometimes you think, logic will prevail, and then people will hit you with some real perplexing views.
Is that the president of the island of Ben Nevis?
It's the Lord High Juror of the island of Ben Nevis and St. Kitts. Yes. God rest their souls.
Next up, it's Season 6, Episode 10, the fantastically titled Grandpa vs. Sexual Inadequacy. Written by Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein. Directed by Wes Archer. Aired December 4th, 1994.
Saucy Marge Marge Simpson, the next door neighbor, is hugging a semi-naked Homer J. Simpson. Homer, the morning, and Homer says, "Where are my pants?" And actually, this is one of my favorite lines. I haven't heard it for a long time, but I love it. Marge says, "You threw them out of the window in a fit of passion and said you were never going to need them again."
Yeah.
Cut to Ned with a big stick in his garden trying to knock Homer's jeans, his pants, out of a tree while Maude stands next to him with a garbage bag open, ready to catch them. And Ned's having a good go at poking them. They're right in the top of the tree. "Oh, hurry, Neddy, they're awful." And she's, pained expression, pained voice, ready to catch these dirty, filthy Simpsons trousers. And Ned says, "You just be ready with that garbage bag," because they don't want it to hit ground. God knows what will happen if they hit the Flanders front lawn and start crawling away.
Exactly. Yeah, a small but pivotal scene. This is one of the few times where you sort of see the Simpsons coming across slightly better than the Flanders, or sort of the more normal. Like the Simpsons are the one who are sort of just like having the loving conversation, and then the Flanders are the ones outside being weird.
To be honest, Homer did throw his trousers out of the window and into the trees. So if you wake up in the morning with a pair of your next door neighbor's pants in your tree, they're challenging you, and you then get a big stick and try and get them out. There's an argument that you are acting more logical and normal there than they were.
Yeah, maybe
they're equally bonkers and they deserve each other.
Yeah, but the Simpsons seem to be happier in this moment than the Flanders. Like Homer and Marge are talking to each other nicely, and meanwhile, Ned's kind of frantically, like snapping at Maude a little bit.
It's true, but it's almost the equivalent if Homer had gone and taken a dump and then smeared his dirty khaki arse all over their front window. The way they're reacting is similar to that.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Which might be an overreaction, but, was Homer wearing underpants? And if so, where did they go? And if not, God help Maude when they actually pass by her face and into that garbage bag. Let's hope that she's got her angle right and that the pants don't fall directly onto her face and she inhales Homer's sweaty crotch.
Yeah, I think that should have been how the scene ended, but they missed a golden opportunity for those pants to fall out the window and hit Maude, fall out the tree.
I think here's what I would do, and I would have extended that to about 5 to 10 minutes, although we are into Family Guy territory here, where the pants hit her and then she wrestles and falls and is unable to get them off her face, and then Ned's attempting to get them off, and then possibly the underpants fall from the tree onto Ned's head, and I think there's a good 5 minutes in there. If I was writing it, which is probably why I'll never be allowed to write episodes of The Simpsons or any TV show.
I think it would pass pretty easily now. I think you'd easily get away with that.
Just filling time, isn't it? With it, if what I've heard about the recent Simpsons episodes is true, that would be most of the episode.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted on that because I watched the most recent season recently and did enjoy it quite thoroughly. But prior to that, there's some absolute balls of flaming garbage.
I would like to check out the highs and lows of late period Simpsons. I think until we get to Maude's passing, God rest her soul, I'm more or less up to date. But after that, these will be brand new to me. And I wonder how that'll be because, these clips I've seen before and they're beloved. These clips are beloved to me from my days of watching Simpsons episodes multiple times, but I'd say probably season 11, 12, I've barely seen any of them, which obviously that doesn't set me in very good stead to run a Simpsons podcast, but
who knows? Not a lot changes. So I'm pretty, I think I stuck around till maybe like 25, 26, and then I kind of drifted out of it, but I intend to watch them all because I need to check for some accidental background mods.
Exactly. Accidental background mods would be awesome. We found several of them, and there's a theme running through of that they're accidentally or even deliberately posting mods. Because we did find one that you claimed, no spoilers, spoiler, that you claim that there is at least one accidental background mod in a later season.
2. I found 2 so far.
Wow. Yeah, maybe reusing old stock stuff, or maybe just in a fit. In a brain fart, they threw in a deceased character.
Maybe.
What do you think the chances are of one day the Simpsons waking up to find Maude Flanders' pants or skirt, Maude Flanders' pants or skirt thrown willy-nilly into their front yard?
I think there was only one time that could have possibly happened, and it is when post-death Ned gets the Simpson family to help them clean out Maude's stuff, and Homer and Bart put it all in a large wood chipper.
Oh yeah, we talked about that. Yes, we've talked about before how they absolutely disrespected all of Ned's property, including his most prized possessions relating to Maude. But we'll get to that later in the day.
Yeah, so I think that would be the only example of a time that any of her items of clothing, other than the time that maybe they bought everything and Homer bought everything for like $10, and they were sat in the garden wearing like the Maude Loves Nell t-shirts.
Yeah. That's one of those things where it wouldn't have been too far amiss to have Homer wearing a pair of Maude's knickers on his head.
Yeah.
That's where I would have gone with that scene, not just the t-shirt, but probably using her shoes to hold his sparkling wine.
Yes.
Next up, Season 6, Episode 13, And Maggie Makes 3. Written by Jennifer Crittenden. Directed by Swinton Osgood III. Aired January 22nd, 1995.
This is a biggie for you. Young Maude, ? Is what I've written. Marge, next door neighbor Marge Simpson, walks in through the door, and we see her sisters, Patty and Selma. We see Luann Van Houten, the Lovejoys, the Hibberts, only the ladies, and that woman with the red scarf, who you'll have to tell me who it is later, I can't remember. It's a surprise baby shower. She is pregnant, and Marge says, "Oh, I haven't told Homie. He'll be home any minute." And they do that false start where the wind blows the door open, and then you think, oh, it's just the wind, and then Homer comes in instantly. Whew, the old switcheroo. I don't know if back in the 90s that would have tricked anyone. I don't think so. I think everyone would have known exactly what was happening in that gag from the year 0. It's windy as hell. Hey, wait a minute. What are all these presents? Maude at that point, because she is there too, looks concerned. And Homer says, "It looks like you're showering Marge with gifts." Picks up a little baby shirt. Little tiny baby-sized gifts. Homer suspects nothing. He's heading upstairs for a bath, and Big Mouth, Maude Flanders, who, to be honest, even though this is this Bart or Lisa or Maggie in the belly? It's Maggie, right?
Yeah, it's Maggie, so it's only like a year ago.
It's only had a year before. Big Mouth Maude shouts, "By the way, congratulations on your new job, Homer." And waves at him in kind of a weird way. And Homer, then the penny drops. "New job? Marge is pregnant." He pulls out the remainder of his hair, screams, and we see more really strange kind of like 3/4 above angle where she's got they don't quite know how to draw her, and she has this very kind of like pointy face. Maybe you can throw it up for the people on the YouTube. So what's going on there?
There's a lot to unpack. I'll start off by not talking about Maude. I'll talk about that woman you mentioned, who is Ruth Powers, who only moved into the next door house in like season 4 when Maggie was very much 1 year old. So she shouldn't be there. For one.
Chronological error.
Yes, I think they've also like the dog might be there, and It might be a different flashback, but there's definitely one. I think it's a flashback of when Marge is telling Homer that she's pregnant with Lisa, and he screams and runs out the room. And he runs up the stairs past a picture of like 8-year-old Lisa.
Oh, that's spooky. That's Kubrick-esque.
It is. Maud, the whole scene, like before this, leading up to this, is like people like Moe and Wiggum and possibly Apu saying to Homer, like, increasingly, Patty and Selma have told everybody in town that Marge is pregnant, and people keep dropping, like, starting off with just like congratulations, and the last one is Moe, who just says, "Way to get Marge pregnant," and he says that's an abstract way of telling me congratulations on my new job, but like, thank you.
Yes.
And then he comes home, and then Maud drops the bombshell on him, and maybe this is why he probably already didn't like her, but this certainly isn't going to help in the relationship between Homer and Maud, because he will probably in some way blame Maud for the arrival of Maggie now.
Well, do it for her. In the end of the day, you know, the whole theme of the episode is that Homer's kind of trapped by this third kid. However, really, you know, he's not. He hasn't tried to move anywhere or do anything else anyway. So really,
No.
And Maud is the only one, and again, you can't, you know, Homer might judge her unreasonably and unfairly, but she's the only one who didn't attempt to give it away.
Yeah, she was the only one who, again, because she's nice, I imagine this is why they picked Maud to be the person who delivered this line out of those women, because it kind of shows that Maud is not just thinking about Marge being pregnant, she's also thinking, oh, and Homer got a new job, I should say. Congratulations. Which also means that Maud, at this point with Homer, still has some level of, you know, like pleasantries. Like, she doesn't want to be outright rude to him yet, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think maybe there's ups and downs, because it can't be that long after. It's within a year that the boob incident happens, and then the chicken bone incident, and basically several big run-ins with Homer in which he has zero respect for Maude Flanders. But at that point, it looks like, yeah, they're on a bit of a high. Do you think there was a decline after that, or do you think this was just a relatively calm point in their highs and lows of their interactions?
I think things must be pretty calm, because they've already been there for like 6 years or so, since like they moved into that house when Bart was like a young child, I believe. And from the Ann Landers thing that we saw, which I'm working on some kind of little timeline for Maud with actual like set dates that won't play out. I just want to see how it lines up. But Ned says something about it being 4,000 days since the Ann Landers incident, which is roughly 11 years. And so that's the earliest we've seen her. So they were already in that house 11 years ago.
And we've speculated they moved in quite a long time before that, right? We've speculated they've been there 20 or so years.
Yeah. Yeah. So this can't be the first. They're probably just having a lull, like you said. I can't see them living together for so long, because that would imply that Maggie was sort of the reason that Homer became much worse. And I would argue that Maggie is probably Homer's favourite of the three children.
Maggie is probably in some way actually calmed Homer down by making him have less energy and be more busy, and he's got a little bit older. So you got to kind of assume that the bad stuff he's doing now is actually pales into comparison to the bad stuff he's done before. So, you know, there may be a very ripe, and who knows, maybe we'll hear about it in Maud's diary, there may be a very ripe, fertile period in that first 6 years of some real run-ins between the Flanders and the Simpsons. But at this point, it looks like they're on a pretty good footing.
Yeah, and it's nice to see Maud out and about with the ladies of Springfield without any hostility. Like, she seems to be, everybody's having a nice time at the baby shower. And
Yeah,
if anybody's the villain, it's Patty and Selma.
Patty and Selma, because they don't like Homer really, right? So they're more digging it to him than
Yeah,
anything else.
they aren't. If Maude doesn't like Homer, then Patty and Selma have some kind of unnamed emotion towards him, negative emotion.
An emotion that is beyond hatred in the scale of emotions.
Yes, if we are saying that Maude hates Homer, then from her subtle jibes, then Patty and Selma, who bought a tombstone for him after they believed that he died, certainly. I'm pretty sure it says something like our lives are richer with him being gone, something like that on the tombstone as well. So,
they've got
Maude should. I wonder if Maude spent any time with the Bouvier sisters.
I mean, it would be interesting to have the three of them get together over a Bacardi Breezer and really rip Homer a new one. That would be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
Next, it's season 6, episode 14, Bart's Comet, written by John Swartzwelder, directed by Bob Anderson, aired February 5th, 1995.
Where there's a lot of Maude in and out of there. So the Simpsons are at the door of a nuclear fallout shelter that Ned has built, seemingly in his backyard. And Neddy says, "I knew this would happen, so I built the shelter big enough for both of our families." And opens the door to see Rod and Todd and a rather placid and duck-faced Maude just stirring there. Yes, the end of the world is nigh, but there'll be another one along, it's time. It's time for the end of the world to come, and heaven awaits me, etc., etc. Homer says, "No deal, out," and attempts to kick Ned and maybe the entire family out of this very well stocked nuclear fallout shelter. Now, we'll find out a little bit more about the details, but my first question was, does Maude agree to this madness, or does she put up a fight, or?
I think she's on board because, again, I think, what's that phrase? Fail to prepare to fail.
Yeah.
So I think that is a motto that the Flanders probably run the business by, because they've got a bomb shelter for a start.
Yeah.
And Ned had the foresight to know that. I would argue that Maude maybe said, maybe you should make this shelter big enough for next door, because they are going to, if anything happens, they are going to come to this bomb shelter. But what she didn't expect is that the rest of town would also want to come in. So that's sort of a fault in her stars.
Yeah, fault in her logic that, yes, the next door neighbors will come in. And as much as we dislike them after them throwing apple pie in our face, etc., throwing their dirty trousers into our tree, we don't actually want them to burn. And then if you follow that logic through, it's like, but you do want everybody else in the town to burn. And so it's weird that that Maude would go out on a limb and attempt to save the Simpsons, but not, let's say, Apu or even the Wiggums, including Sarah Wiggum, relation, as we speculated to ourselves, but not out loud before. It feels like she would have at least attempted to bring her possible relations in rather than those ruffians from next door.
Well, I see it slightly differently in that I don't think she made the suggestion out of kindness, but just out of preparation, very matter-of-factly. Like, I don't think it was, we should make room for next door because I want to save them. It was more, we need to make room for next door because if we don't, they are going to come into this shelter and we will not have enough space.
I do also think there's a Maude that would say, we're not going to make room for them, but we're just going to make sure we lock the door and pretend that we can't hear them outside.
Yeah, I imagine when the door, we don't see inside the shelter when the door is knocked, but I can see Maude just turning and shaking her head at Ned, even before hearing who it was.
Yes, but definitely when she heard like Homer's loud voice through the thick steel door, just putting her finger to her lips and just telling everyone to be quiet, and hopefully they'll go away, and the fallout from the nuclear attack will incinerate their bones, and we won't have to deal with them anymore in this post-apocalyptic landscape.
There's every chance there was a race. Like, Ned could have had to rush Rod and Todd in, knowing that if Maude got in there first, she would lock herself in completely alone.
That is a very dark road, but it's one that we've explored before, and there's definitely a chance that Maude, given this opportunity, would have locked them all in and ignored everybody else, with the knowledge that should it push comes to shove, there's 3 tasty meals there for her, or yes, just locked them out. So actually, it's quite perplexing, and we'll get into this next week, why she acquiesces to allow the entire town to come in, almost certainly rendering all of their supplies useless, and basically damning all of them.
Yeah, I also think she flip-flops more than we've seen her in terms of what she's thinking and what she's doing, and the ideas and sort of like morals she has. In the whole time she spends, everything we see of Maude in this next episode is pretty much inside this bomb shelter, and there's a lot of it happening internally. But yeah, there's a few ideas that crop up and a few things that happen that she's super quick to be on board with, and then super quick to go back on that idea.
Flip-flopper, eh?
Yeah.
In a nuclear bunker, Flanders to the left, Maude at the front, Simpsons to the right. Marge says, "We've got 1 more hour." Looks at the watch. Homer groans, "Oh, an hour!" Maude sits there, hands clasped with a great posture as always. The Flanders family absolutely still. None of them move even a muscle while the Simpsons are talking about how long there's an hour. I mean, what a beautiful example of like stoicism in the face of this absolute pain of having to wait 60 minutes to know whether the world has ended. And I did point out, because I'd forgotten the ending, spoiler, that the bunker looks pretty solidly made out of breeze blocks. That's it.
Yeah, it's a small one. Homer goes on to, I think I cut this out because I thought there was we were going to do these all last time and we were out of time, but Homer says, "Where is this comet?" And then there's a knock on the door and he says, "There it is," which always made me laugh. Maude here is again gleefully stoically waiting for the end. She's not moving. There's probably activities to be passing time. She could be sketching, but she isn't, and she also doesn't seem that bothered that Homer's whinging. Whereas, her face, the last time they were this confined in the car with on the way to the beach, she was livid.
Yeah, Homer, other than a bit of whining though, he didn't really do anything as annoying as the rapping Ronnie Reagan tape that he pulled out now. Again.
Yeah, but the context of this in Maude's head would be, if this comet does hit, whether she thinks that's bad or good, she's now in a situation where, much like the Bongo cast, these are going to be the only 2 families left in Springfield if this bomb shelter works, and she doesn't seem to mind.
She didn't mind then either, did she? There was last week, the last time we did, a lot of staring off into space and smiling, and generally not too bothered, even when Homer viciously attacked her husband for no good reason. And who knows what kind of shenanigans would have gone on. I imagine that Maude, while she's sitting there very smiling, very, very carefully, actually has razor blades in between her fingers ready to just smack Homer should he decide that he's going cabin crazy and tries to make a move for it. I imagine she'd just take him down ruthlessly, rip his body for parts.
The alternate suggestion I have is maybe Ned entrusted Maude with the hiring and construction of this bomb shelter. Like maybe she was the one who said, I know some people, my sister knows, etc., X, Y, and Z. So Maude may have had it designed shoddily so that it in fact didn't work. So she sat there knowing that when the comet hits, they won't be safe anyway. So she doesn't really mind Homer's nonsense.
Well, that's a very dark take on this, but also, given the outcome of the episode, Makes a lot of sense. So basically she said, hey, Nettie, leave this with me. I'll make sure, wink, wink, that this shelter's strong enough to withstand a 50 million megaton bomb. And then she said to her maid, just pile all the bricks on top of each other. Oh, you don't need any of that cement stuff between them. That's just that's just an extra cost we don't need, you know.
For a start, it's above ground.
Yeah.
Which isn't always the best start, is it?
I think usually nuclear bunkers are below ground traditionally. I don't know. What's the history of this shelter like? Was it mentioned ever before, or was it like so they just always had it in their back garden?
I don't think it's ever been there before. Like, it definitely wasn't there for the barbecue or the chicken wishbone incident. Homer just says something along the lines of, let's go to the shelter. And Lisa says, we have a bomb shelter. And he says, like, Homer Simpson takes care of his family. And then it cuts to the scene we did last week at the end where he tells them to get out.
Yeah, we didn't follow that up. So in the end, they didn't leave. So it's obviously they came to some conclusion. And again, I think probably Maude, maybe Marge, stepped in between them and said, no, Homer, that's an unacceptable solution. There's enough room for all of us.
Yeah, Marge just snaps at him. I thought I left this in, but Marge just snaps at him and says, get in the shelter, Homer. And he does.
Oh, sorted it. But I would have liked Maude just glared at him with a slight little, her eyes just slightly squinted at him to say, do not mess with me, Homer Simpson. We're going to be in this shelter for a little while together, and you do not want to wake up with some cheese wire around your neck. Although, to be honest, there's a good chance that's going to happen anyway. Once those lights go out, lights come back on. Oh, they've all been murdered. It wouldn't take much to set. We already know Ned has an absolute rage problem. Later, we find out that one of his children doesn't take much pushing to start loading up the weapons for retribution. And
knows how to.
What's that?
He also knows how to do it. We'll get to that later, but he doesn't have a problem.
We're very excited about the show, aren't we? We're jumping around all over the place. Because as close as the Simpsons and the Flanders are, Maude and Homer are going to get a whole lot closer before the end of this episode. Homer is now struggling to close the door of the shelter because pretty much all of Springfield are now in there. Maude is squished up right next to Homer. Their bodies must be squished like on an early morning commute in Tokyo Town Central. He will like that, maybe. She will not. There are comedic back and forths around the room, and Lisa says, I get out, but I don't know where I am. Barney says, something's touching me, and Skinner says, I am, and Barney quite likes that. He says, okay, because it was the 90s, and that stuff was acceptable back then. Maude, during this whole interaction, is just stirring silently, inquisitively maybe, as Homer's pudding-filled body is squashed up and maybe the rest of her body squashed up against the shoddily constructed wall of the nuclear fallout shelter. Krusty's... Oh, yeah, then they start to make a list of who should stay and who should go, right? Yeah,
I'll interject now before that bit. I don't really have much to say other than I noticed Wally from Where's Wally is present for a brief thing at the start when you see everybody. I think Maude is at this point regretting everything that's led up to this moment in her head. Not in life, but just in like the immediate past. Why didn't I make a bigger shelter? Like, why did I foresee Homer pulling all this, jazz? And I didn't foresee the rest of these idiots trying it.
Yeah, she basically hasn't really thought her plan through. This is indeed her plan. She hasn't thought it through at all in the slightest, has she?
No, and I do like that Barney has some sort of... Barney and Skinner, outside of the B-sharps, I can't think of them interacting. So I like that Barney has, a deep admiration for Skinner.
If anyone's hands are going to be on me, it should be Seymour's.
Yes, but there's a lot of people missing. It's not the whole thing.
I did notice that unless we're just at a strange vantage point in which we don't get to see everybody, then there's a whole bunch of people not there.
Maude's possible relations aren't present. Maude's friends, Luann and Agnes and Edna aren't present. Helen's there. But that's about it. No one else that Maude cares about is in that shelter.
So Maude's small circle of friends, Ruth Powers, Janice Hubler, her evil sister, Laurie Goodman, None of them made the cut.
No.
Her investorettes didn't make the cut. Her family did, but there's also a bunch of random people we've never seen before who did make the cut.
Yeah. So again, this must just be and it sort of makes sense that the ones that Maude is friends with, are sensible enough to have their own plan in place and don't need to use somebody else's shelter.
Are you suggesting that there's another shelter somewhere that's a little bit more exclusive?
There sort of has to be something because, well, yeah, Burns is sorted. He's off somewhere, safe. I imagine he wouldn't let anybody else in, though.
Oh, no.
The Wiggums aren't particularly bright, but he has the advantage of the police station, and maybe there's something there. The Van Houtens seem to have a plan in place. The Hibberts. Is Hibbert there?
Hard to say.
I remember. But, the strangest one is Krusty, because Krusty's, well off. The rest of these people, it makes sense that they wouldn't have their own sort of bomb shelter, and it would be Flanders who was the most prepared. But Krusty is a celebrity.
I imagine Krusty would have a delightful entertainment-based fallout shelter with like a white piano and a swing in it.
Given all the Sideshow Bob incidents, you'd think he'd have a panic room or something set up by now.
I imagine so. Still, that's not going to get us to the bottom of the Maude Flanders problem, is it?
No.
Krusty, he's saying we need people who laugh, to bring laughter. Mo said we need someone who's going to serve drinks. And we need Homer. We need power. And Homer, you can provide that. Homer unconvincingly agrees that he can. During this whole time, Maude is just making kind of really goofy eyes at everybody. Nobody seems to suggest that Maude might bring anything to the table. She's not very high on the list. And then we get Lovejoy saying that, we need religious enlightenment. He then suggests that his wife, the Mrs. Lovejoy, will provide the gossip that is required for any future civilization, although a while back she did promise to use it only for good. And equally, who knows, Maude might be able to provide a higher quality of gossip. Who knows?
Here's where Helen was more savvy than Maude, because Maude stood there thinking, this is where her plan of blending into the background and being unseen doesn't work out for her, because now she needs people to remember and what she does, and she stood there thinking, I've got no chance now.
Do you think we'll need scrapbooks in the future?
Exactly. Not only does nobody in this room particularly care for me other than in a physical manner, the only way she's surviving is as some kind of breeding cow.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and I think she knows that. Whereas Helen's been savvy, noticed, either with or without having to tell Reverend Lovejoy. It depends how, in control of the situation she is. But she's secured a place with no skills to provide, which shows that, either Reverend Lovejoy cares more about Helen than Ned does about Maude. Because Ned isn't there saying, me and Maude should stay. But it's very un-Ned to do that anyway. But, Helen's in, thanks to her husband. And Maude must be thinking, I should have done that.
Well, as horrific as your breeding idea is, the list does seem to be heavily centered towards men.
Yeah.
Was that a 90s thing as well? Do you think in the 90s it was just like, well, let's just list all the most important people that are clearly going to be men?
Yes, I think the white men being considered the most important was a problem very specifically. Specifically trademarked for the 90s. Thankfully, that all cleared itself out in the climate we live in now. But yes, at this weird, crazy point in the time, that was the notion that was being considered. Would you believe?
Yeah, obviously the patriarchy has since then been abolished and dismantled. But back in the 90s, yes, white men were basically in power. Thank goodness.
It's hard to believe now. Hard to believe at this point, but yeah. So at one point, white men were the most revered and powerful.
Now, Nathan, the last thing we want is to get ourselves cancelled. So let's be careful what we're saying, because the internet, it's a wild, wild place. So let's stay safe and let's move on to talking about the one thing we won't need. As Homer says, the one thing we won't need in the future are left-handed stores. No reaction from Maude whatsoever.
No.
Homer then turns to Rod and Todd, not Maude, and whispers, I'm terribly sorry, before immediately turning and continues bashing Ned, shouting that he's the most useless person here, and if anybody dies, it should be him. Again, turning to Rod and Todd, not Maude, and saying, I'm really sorry. And then, saying that they should kick out Flanders, which a couple of things. One, he knows that he cannot say that to Maude, otherwise she'd probably rip him a new one right there and then. Although she's standing right next to him and doesn't respond even the slightest way. And second of all, he somehow thinks that Maude is more useful than Ned to the town.
Yeah.
It doesn't explain why. Maybe there's no logic to Homer's decision, but he does imply such a thing.
Yeah, well, this, given how close they were a few weeks ago, and that they sort of are doing better than they were in the early seasons in terms of like friendship, this is just horrible. That Homer instantly, like, there's no like train of thought for him. It's just that list, and then they weren't talking about who they didn't need either. They were doing it in a polite sort of, okay, let's get the definites out first. And Homer's like, well, I can tell you who I don't care if they die, Ned. And then no one disagrees. Nobody, not Reverend Lovejoy,
Not
none of them. Not that guy who that time when Ned was in trouble jumped up to help him. All these people who turned up at the Leftorium to support the business and now saying it's completely useless, which it is. They're not wrong, but Ned is much more than a left-handed shot. He brings, in a post-apocalyptic comic world, I think Ned would be one of the better people to have around.
With his big muscles and his
positivity. And I didn't consider the fact that Homer probably doesn't, again, I don't think it was a choice of who should I pick, Ned or Maude. He just doesn't think about Maude. So he just remembers that he hates Ned. But again, he doesn't hate Ned most of the time. And now all of a sudden, after being allowed into the shelter, they've all decided that the person who could have just said, sorry, no, we don't have enough room, is now the person that has to die. And it's all very, it's grim. It's not, we're all going on a trip, let's decide who can't come. Because even that would be quite mean. But this is, thanks for the shelter, get out. Go and die.
It's not the first time that Homer did a little earlier with the chicken bone incident. He did wish bad things to befall Ned, but even at that point, he stopped short of wishing death. So this is another step down a dark road for Homer J. But I'm far more concerned that Maude, who, we know she'll stand up at times and she'll voice her opinion. She decides this is the time when she's just going to make goofy eyes at the wall.
I think there's too many people, perhaps, because she's confident in kicking off with, the sort of the angriest we've seen her with anybody is No Sugar.
Oh, yeah.
And that was to, her next door neighbour and a small girl. So I think she sort of, there's a hierarchy of how she feels like she can behave. And with everybody in town around, there's too many big personalities for Maude. She tried that time at the town hall meeting to come up with a suggestion, and she just got heckled immediately by Homer and had to sit down. So I think she's done with groups.
So had there just been 5 or 6 people, she might have stood up for Neddy.
Yeah.
But even then, a few seconds later, she does finally step up. She somehow makes her way across the room to Neddy with her arms spread out in front of her, and a concerned look on her face, and says, I'm coming with you, Neddy. Ned says, no, you stay here because, and before he'd even finished the word because, she just says, okay. And then she just kind of steps back and just looks down in shame, or just, I better ignore Ned now. I better get used to not having him around, so I'm going to immediately ignore his presence.
Yeah, we've sort of breezed into this one, and I would say this so far is the most definitive and important clip we've looked at in 17 episodes, and we've just breezed into it with no gravitas. I like that.
Let's bring that gravitas right now, Nathan. Just tell us the absolute monolithic implications of what's just unfolded in front of us.
Well, this is one of those situations where you see somebody's true self, death is knocking at that bomb shelter door, and Maude does, I don't think she even meant, I don't know what she would have done if he'd said, okay, when she said, I'm coming with you. I don't know if she would have then said, oh no, my leg hurts or something. Like, I don't.
The old back. It's gone
Yeah,
again.
I believe it was a false sense of support. I don't think she had any intention of going with him. Because again, like Ned's sort of the doormat of the two. Maude, I believe, would be like, hang on a minute, this is our bomb shelter. But only if they were trying to kick her out. And it's a hateful town, but I don't think they're hateful enough to send out Rod or Todd, which is nice. Also, they don't take up that much room, so it'd sort of be pointless. Ned's the biggest of the four to send out, but again, Barney's in there. Comic book guy might be in there. There's bigger people to rid of, but yeah, she this defines who she is to me. This clip is that she's false sense of niceness, some semblance of I'm going to do the right thing, and then given the option to not, she will just say, okay, see ya. Thanks for the marriage. Thanks for the kids. Walk to your death.
That should be on a T-shirt. Thanks for the marriage. Thanks for the kids. Now walk to your death. That's a great quote. But yeah, because it's not even like this is out of character. The joke is that she says, okay, but it's not like we're even surprised that she's done it, to be honest. It's kind of like she's got that hard, steely look that comes back from time to time that kind of is like, there's totally a way that she would have done this. However, and this is the beauty and magic of Maude, had she said, let's go together, we also wouldn't have been surprised. She could have gone either way, and both ways are totally in keeping with the duality of Maude Goodman Flanders.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been. And she's a bit of a mental wild card in that because she doesn't give away what she's thinking. It can always go one of two ways, and that's either the Michael Caine watching the world burn Maude, or the Maude that gets the Praiseland statue with the shame of joy. There's an angel Maude and a devil Maude sat on Maude's shoulders all the time.
Yes. I think
devil Maude wins. I imagine this is one of the rare situations where devil and angel Maude looked at each other and nodded in agreement. We're not going to be dying for this man today.
Well, it's dark times in the Flanders house, and I'd like to say it gets a little bit lighter, but he doesn't, not yet. So basically, now Ned turns to his sons and he says, Todd, I want you to shoot Daddy if he tries to get back in, and hands him a shotgun shell. Very Coen brothers. Very, very, very Fargo-esque, actually. Fargo the movie. And says, okay, Dad, sobbing. He cracks open the shotgun and starts loading it up. Has Maude been teaching her sons to hunt? Because I really don't think Ned has.
Yeah, he really knows how to handle that shotgun, doesn't he?
He certainly does. Through the tears, he's loading it up. And again, what's going on in Maude's mind now? She just sent her husband out to die, and now she's watching him give a loaded weapon to his children inside a very packed room.
I think she's just backing out of this one. Even though she'd stand by her decision of saying to Ned, bye, I imagine she'd still feel some shame towards it. As we've established, she must like them to a degree. So I imagine she feels ashamed of what she's just done. So she's going to do a bit of head burying, and she's going to, stare at the wall and think about Jesus until the whole day is over.
I think so. This is called, and someone brought this term up to me a few weeks ago, called spiritual detachment or spiritual evasion or something. It's when you use spiritual means so that you don't, a spiritual bypassing, so you don't actually have to engage with the world around you. It's like, you meditate for 10 hours a day, or you say prayers, or you go off on a retreat, and ostensibly you're doing it like Maude did a few weeks ago for the goodness of yourself, but actually you're just doing it to avoid having to face the real world. So she's getting into a little bit of that. She's like, I tell you what, I'm just going to pretend this stuff's not happening, and then tomorrow, after my husband has been burned to death by a comet and my son possibly has shot several people, then we'll pick up the pieces and see where we go. And it's like the darkest timeline from Community. I just imagine if there was a spin-off, this would be a very interesting and, I dare I say, fun point for us to do a spin-off Simpsons episode where actually it does go ahead, and then Maude has to live the next few weeks, months, years in a semi-coherent Springfield, a destroyed post-apocalyptic Springfield in which her children are hunters. But now that's just a Rick and Morty episode again, isn't it? So basically, it seems like what Dan Harmon has done is just taken your average Simpsons episode and make it more ridiculous.
Yeah, and put swear words in it.
Put a lot of swear words in it.
Yeah, it wouldn't even be comedy. It would just be 4 20-minute episodes of Maude, Rod and Todd with a list checking off the bodies. Oh, there's Lunch Lady Doris, she didn't make it, etc.
Bring out your dead. It would be dark, and it might not be a lot of fun, but I'm still...
However, what I was going to say is I can't remember when this happens either. It's at the cider factory, but it's only a brief scene at some point coming up soon, probably. But Homer's so bored of listening to Ned talk that his brain leaves his body and he just collapses to the floor. So maybe Maude's doing a bit of this here, but without the over-the-top collapsing. Maybe her brain has just come out for 10 minutes. She's just not. Whatever's happening in this room now, Todd's loading a shotgun. She's not seeing that. She's designing Praiseland in her head.
So she's either doing a little bit of astral traveling, or she's entered what we call a fugue state, basically where her body and mind are absolutely detached.
Yeah.
Either way, it's probably not the best way to deal with the situation that she's already made worse, and in several ways. Cut to Maud looking down, sad-ish. Not too sad, but maybe a little bit sad. Neddy is heading off for the door singing Que Sera Sera. Hibbert is there because Hibbert pops up at this point. And Barney, they look the most concerned of everybody. Barney and Hibbert look way more concerned about Ned leaving than Maud does. And then Mo shouts, we could play a game to pass the time. Makes a farmyard animal sound and says, but he just goes, Wiggum shouts it's a pig, Bart shouts it's a cow, Lisa says a pony, Krusty says it's a goat, and Patty and Selma say, Krusty says it's a lady goat, and Patty and Selma say lady goats are a sheep. Interestingly enough, when I did put this into Google, I do know, by the way, that lady goats are not sheep, but when I did put that into Google and I typed in lady goats, the first question that Google suggested to me was, are lady goats sheep? So that's cool. And Maud, at this point, while the game is going on, Maud again out astral traveling. But she has a worried look on her face, and she's squeezed hard against that wall, against Homer Simpson's body. Yeah, it's
good that this bunker can take all these people pushing against the walls, but it can't handle a small rock again. So Maud might just be waiting for the walls to burst out around her, which is but I imagine she's got to be repulsed, but she's also got to be doing it to herself because she could move. It would take. It's not very polite of her, and she'd have to make a bit of a scene. But if she wanted to wiggle away from Homer because he stank or whatever, she could. She's just let Ned go out to his death, so I don't think she needs to be next to Rod and Todd particularly to feel safe or anything.
So what are the implications here, Nathan, then?
That she's sort of either too polite with strangers to do anything, because again, she's not defended any. She's not said, no, Ned should stay. Get rid of Patty. She's sort of, either doing it for herself to irritate herself, or she's too polite. The Mo noise is probably the best noise from the 32-year run of The Simpsons, though.
It is a great one, and it's good that we do get a reveal later of what animal it was. But here's the thing. Let's say Maud is thinking, when this bad shit goes down, I want to leave my options open for new husbands. Do you think that's going through her head? Or do you just think she's off in the other world, as we said, and she's not even really considering that Homer Simpson's fat lardy belly is squashing her?
I think of anything she'll be thinking, she's either thinking about something else or she's thinking about Ned. I think, because again, she doesn't look proud of herself, does she? She looks somewhat ashamed, and that only sort of gets worse as the scene goes on, especially when she's made to feel shame very shortly. But,
so you think maybe that there's a little bit of regret in there, but not enough to make her shout, "No, Ned, come back, I'll go."
She's not a scene maker.
No.
So she wouldn't. I don't think she likes it when all eyes are on her. She likes some eyes on her, but I think she likes to control which eyes they are.
But she, given a choice between letting her husband stroll to his demise and kind of raising her voice a little bit, she still comes down on the side of like, a bit shy.
Yeah, which is possibly in the, again, it depends how deeply these people were thinking about Maude when writing these episodes, because the kind of humour could be coming from the fact that, you know, this family are so polite and so against any kind of dramatics that she would rather let him walk to his death than make a scene.
Yes.
We know that it's because she doesn't want him to die. She wants the chaos of his death. But it's not personal against Ned. It's not like, I really want Ned to die. It's just, she knows how altering that would be for Springfield and her poor children.
And how thrilling it would be, how it would connect her once again with the real visceral thrill of life as she picked up his charred remains and screamed to the sky.
I imagine she was a bit of a ticking time bomb when she did die, in that there were three ways it could have ended. It could have been her dying, Ned dying, or a hard drug addiction. She would have needed to feel some connection to something, and I believe it wouldn't have come from a enlightened place.
So we're either looking at The Shining or Requiem for a Dream, essentially, then, as the other two ways Maude could have gone, had it not been accidental death.
Yeah. Either she would have killed Ned or allowed Ned to die in some situation, or not helped him. Because again, he could have gone and got those hot dogs. And
well, not a day goes by that he doesn't think that.
Yeah, it's true. He even, talks about it at one point, but we're way too ahead.
We're very ahead here. Clip 3. That clip took us quite a while to get through there, but we soldier on. It's all gold. Maude now is just basically rocking backwards and forwards, and Rod and Todd have like angry eyes as Homer shouts, "Enough! Shut up! I can't take this anymore. I can't let that brave man die. I'm surprised and disgusted by all of you." Turns to Rod and Todd and says, especially his children. Once again, Maude's not even on his radar, but just the balls of this man.
Chaos. It's the quickest turnaround. It's even quicker than when he defended him in church, because that was, a slow payoff of him really liking Ned. But again, it's sort of, this is what they do. They flip between, especially in these few seasons before Maude dies, they flip between him either, Ned being like one of his sort of friends or someone he can talk to, like, this is the worst man alive, let's let him die. And then he can just flip back and be like, how could you all do that? But it's great.
It is great, and you did laugh out loud on your cell phone when you sent me the clip. There's a fun picture that I put in my notes of Maude, and her nose is kind of over the top of, I guess, Rod's hair, and it looks like she's got a big bushy mustache, which is fun. But yeah, Maude, that must have brought Maude back to the ground, back to reality, because she's like literally kind of, it looks like she's rocking, and she's really, you think that would be the last straw, but she doesn't say anything again. Just stands there and let Homer just straight out call them out, though she does deserve it. She did send him out to die. Yeah,
and she sort of doesn't get any of the backlash for it. She kind of gets away with this one because, again, Homer aims all of his anger towards Rod and Todd. Because, again, they didn't do anything. Like, if Homer or Marge had been kicked out, Bart and Lisa would have been part of the mob trying to save them, like front and centre. So that can't be an excuse for Rod and Todd. So they are sort of as, to blame as Maude. But, yeah, Maude gets away with this one because Homer probably forgot she was there.
Probably. She really is just totally ignored in this kind of, this story which is centered almost entirely on her family.
Yeah.
She barely gets a look in, even though she's there for the entire show. She gets like one line in a show in which she's in almost every scene.
Yeah, this is like the last. Again, she doesn't appear until this point in the episode, and it's quite late on. But then once she's in it, she's in it from, then getting to the door of the shelter all the way through till the end. But yeah, not really much in terms of, I think she only gets that one line, the "I'm coming with you."
Yeah, turns at once just to completely abandon her husband.
Yeah.
Homer is berating her children in front of her, one of whom is armed with a shotgun. And, even this does not spur her on even slightly to slap his bald head and say, you leave these children alone. They've just lost their father. Something like that. But no, Homer says, I'm going out there. And it was a baby ox. I had to listen to that line about 5 times to realize what that meant. But obviously he was talking about the sound that Mo made. And Mo says, you're right about everything. And then says, I want to die too, which is the kind of thing Mo would say. To be honest, I'm surprised Mo wasn't fighting to get out. And of course, then Homer leaves the shelter and everyone follows him. And of course, Maude loves a mob. She's sprinting out the door before her children, seconds after wanting to send her husband out to die. Now she's like, the mob rules. And she just runs out following them. And once again, abandons everybody else to follow the mob. This time, though, she does still stick with the mob. She doesn't do one.
Yeah, she's the sort of front and center again. I think that she doesn't get involved with the Homer yelling at Rod and Todd because, again, Todd's holding a shotgun, so there's a part of her that wants him to use it. So I think she must think, if I stay out of this one, I don't know what Todd's limits are yet. We've seen him, he obviously is quite, out of the 2 kids, he's the one who is easiest to influence. He copies people. He copied Homer's bad language, and he blindly got into mini golf because Ned wanted him to, and it sort of goes on in a similar fashion for a while. And don't forget,
he was the one who stepped up and put his foot down about the vegetables.
Exactly, and that was again, he was copying Homer's language there.
The thing is, Ned knew this, right? And Maude knew this. They both knew if you're going to give this gun to one of them, if you give it to Todd, you know that when the time comes, he'll do it. Probably before the time comes. He's a wild
Rod's a bit too much of a wet blanket for now.
Well, Rod's much more of a Ned man. He's a daddy's boy, and I imagine Todd, but we don't see it as much. But he's the mummy's boy, right? He's got that wild glint in his eye that modeling brings to the table.
Yeah, and it's Todd who later has more of a, even if it did take 20 seasons, 21 seasons to address it, Todd is the one that grieves for Maude more than Rod.
He's a mummy's boy. Not much, but he's a little bit of a mummy's boy. Okay, so then we cut to Ned. Ned's on the hill, feeling alone, thinking he's alone at this point, singing Que Sera, Sera, and then just over the horizon we see Maude and Marge and Homer as well, but Maude, first one, arms aloft, singing. She's changed her tune. Now she's hugging Ned. She's next to him. She's got her arms. And one thing that is very clear in my eyes and my ears is that is Maude singing. No question. When they first come over that hill, there's about 2 or 3 voices, and one's very strongly a female voice, and definitely not Marge.
Nice. I'll re-listen. I still haven't noticed that one, but now I'm intrigued. I did need to point out that in that last scene, I forgot to say that she isn't the first one running out. She's not the last, but she's, there's 4 or 5 people before her who clearly care more about Ned than she does.
Considering she was next to the door, she probably just wanted to just tie her shoelaces and make sure they were safe so she didn't trip on the way out.
Yeah. And then, but she somehow has some kind of change of heart because she ends up being the first one that reaches Ned. So she sprints past everything. Ron and Todd, I can't remember seeing it all in this bit.
No, they do come in. The whole family's swaying and singing in a moment. But the thing is that this is the point where, Maude's like, oh, shit, what have I done here? I've really messed this up. That's why she sprinted past and got there first. She said, Neddy, I changed my mind. I've seen the error of my ways. And really, she was just once again caught up in the mob, really, wasn't she? But she's a wily cat. She knows that she's going to be the one laying her head down next to Ned Flanders tonight, and she's going to have to start making those reparations. Ned,
damage control
instantly.
Yeah, damage control.
Damage control. That's what she's good at. That's what she's all about.
But they do all still think that they're going to die, so Maude won't be thinking particularly about, later that day. She'll just, I think it's like a last ditch attempt to get into heaven, maybe.
Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought about that. It's because I saw the end of what happens, but yeah, they all still think that they're risking their lives and they're all going to go together. So yeah, maybe she thinks because she is a believer, she does believe they're going to go to heaven, and maybe like you say, this is a last ditch attempt. I just condemned the man I love to his death. Oh come on, God, I didn't mean it. Please let
Yeah.
me. So,
I think
go on.
I think that Mer Quimby's there.
Well, Quimby's the one that jumps up and shouts, "It's coming! The comet is approaching!" And then
Yeah.
the comet's coming through the sky, and then it burns up into a tiny ball, and then it splits. That Skinner has a big butt balloon, and then the tiny remnants of the comet hits Ned's the Flanders bunker, and it just immediately collapses.
Yeah.
And we see Ned gasping, and Maude is
Mo?
stood behind Bart, and there's a little chihuahua for some reason next to them. We get a face-forward Maude, not a particularly good one, and she's just standing motionless. And then, all at once, everybody just throws their arms up in the air and shouts, "Hooray!" including Maude. She's moved away from Ned. And now she's found a space and she's celebrating once again alone. Mixed messages. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and I mentioned Quimby because the talking about who was in the bunker. It makes little to no sense for Mer Quimby to be in that bunker with them, and so that implies that people have seen this mass suicide happening on this hill and decided to also join them.
Possibly, but Quimby would. I think what you're implying there is that the city would have its own shelter. Is that correct?
Yeah, like Quimby would be either protected or no longer in Springfield anymore. Like he would have been shipped out of there.
I don't know. I think you're giving the Springfield infrastructure too much credence. It's almost certain they spend that infrastructure money, the bomb shelter money, on like squirrel racing or some other stuff. They will have blown it. Had we got the insight, had this been the Quimby cast, I'm sure we would have speculated or even found out that Quimby took that money and put it all on a lucky seven in Shelbyville's casino.
Yeah, it's just strange that he has no loyalty to the town. There's one, I don't even know if it's this one where he's doing a conference saying, "I'm not going to leave you," and it becomes clear that he's on a beach in the Bahamas. I don't know if that was this episode or not, and he's just made it back. Yeah, all that aside, Chihuahua's there because I think Lisa mentions that the comet would end up being the size of a Chihuahua's head if it broke down or something. Maybe it was Homer. That's why that's there. I don't know whose Chihuahua it is. I'm going to say that it's Bumblebee Man's.
I'd like to think.
Yeah, Maude first across the hill. I like the whole either last ditch to get into heaven or seeing the error of her ways or just trying to pass it off like it was her idea that everybody leave. It is unsettling how quickly the town go from, we need this shelter to save our lives to let's all die together. Like even the sensible sort of members of town, Maude included, are on that hill.
If I'm learning anything from this exploration of Maude and by extension Springfield, is that it is a town that mobs up very, very quickly. And mob mentality will just root almost every episode.
And it will also remove any characterization a lot of time, which helps for us to speculate about sort of Maude's evil side. But when you're looking at every member of Springfield they just become one character they just become like Springfield as opposed to, like independent people with independent thoughts. They all join the same mobs. They all like in the movie, every single person is in that clip of, like walking with the torches to kill Homer. Like everyone in town, doesn't matter how sensible, it doesn't matter how like crazy, how reclusive, like everybody joins the mob in Springfield, and Maude is absolutely no exception.
It is a suspiciously easy thing to do, to just have almost every plot involve a large group of villagers just running somewhere thoughtlessly to do something, whether it's to break into a child's bedroom to look under their mattress, or to build a monorail, or to run away to their certain death. The mob rules, that's one thing.
There's a lot of kind of group impulsiveness throughout these seasons of like rash decisions with not a lot of thought going into them being made by either a small group of people or everybody. And I think that's sort of one of the Simpsons' better qualities.
It's certainly a trope, I'll give it that. So there we go, Nathan. That was the rather long exploration of Maude's take on a near fatal event.
again, like Maude, this is number 3, I think, of Maude, and Maude's closeness with death before the day arrived. Yeah, we're exploring that side of how she sort of doesn't seem to have, she's not really scared of dying, because again, she's got the whole heaven thing to, up her sleeve.
You think so, but also there just seems to be a wild recklessness that she's just like, come on, I'm not scared of you. It doesn't seem, and maybe it is about the heaven and just thinking like, well, I'll be with Jesus on the other side. But also there just seems to be like, come on, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. Flanders.
Yeah, the recklessness is definitely. And the more we do this podcast, the more I lean into the thoughts that she saw those T-shirts coming and she wanted to see what would happen. I think she didn't think she was going to die. She had a confidence, but I think she saw them come in and thought, I'm going for this.
There is something weirdly ironic that she courted death for so long, and in the end what got her was just essentially something that was more or less out of her control. Unless, of course, we're going to speculate at the time that she engineered that.
Yeah, I don't think so, because Homer was the sort of... Everything would have gone fine. They would have just hit Homer and he would have just had 7 or 8 T-shirts. But he had to bend down. Unless we're saying that she placed the thing that distracted him, the bobby pin, knowing that he would bend. But it's a lot of construction to say if she wanted to go, she could have just jumped off the edge.
It's a rather convoluted plan, but she wouldn't want to have left that bad taste of her jumping. This made her a little bit of a martyr, though nobody really cared at the end.
Yeah.
Good grief, that was a long one. Still some to go. Have a little break if you wish. Get yourself a smoke and a waffle. Next up, we have Season 6 Episode 18. A Star is Burns. Written by Ken Keeler. Directed by Susie Dieter. Aired March 5, 1995. Fun fact. Matt Groening hated this episode so much he had his name removed from it.
Ned is stood on the riverbank with his oldest son Rod next to him. Maude, dressed as Moses' mother in a purple shawl and a blue headscarf, and she has Rod bound up like a baby, and she puts him. No, try that again. She has Todd bound up like a baby, wrapped up as baby Moses, but with his big toddy afro, and she's wrapping him up, and she's going to put him in a basket and put him into the river. Put my kids in danger. Yes, please. That's what I've written as a note. Now, Maude, they're making a movie. I don't have any context for why they're doing this, but they're making a movie about Moses, baby Moses. And so they put Todd in the basket among the reeds, and Ned's knelt down, his arms around Rod. Lights, camera, a diddly doodly doodly action Jackson. 80s movies reference. Maude's smiling, Todd's smiling. Maude puts Todd into the river in the basket, and immediately he's swept away. And it is this point when everybody suddenly realizes how bad an idea this is. Todd is washed rapidly down the river as Maude gasps at him. Rod keeps rolling the camera for a second while Ned looks on shocked. Todd is shouting, "Help me!" There's a bit of an audio gag where he goes behind the trees, and Ned's hands clasp together, and he looks up, and Maude's run over to him at this point. She's hanging off his arm in shock, as if none of them predicted that this was going to happen. Ned looks up, he says, Flanders to God, get off your cloud and save my Todd, not our Todd, my Todd. Grey clouds, lightning, a tree is knocked down by the lightning, blocks the path of Todd in the river. Todd sighs, like he just knew it was going to happen. Like they all kind of knew it was going to happen. Insurance, gambling, I don't know. Maude's jumping for joy, arms raised, as are Ned and Rod. Ned looks up, thanks God. God, after basically not giving too many clues over the last 2,000 years about his existence or longer, comes down with a giant hand, makes the okay sign and says, Oakley dokley, therefore proving his existence ultimately in the Simpsons universe. A lot there, Nathan.
Great unpacking. I made some notes for this one. I forgot to look what Moses' mother was called, but this is our second seeing her as a biblical wife/mother.
I did look it up actually, but I didn't write it down. Her name, I mean, I checked on the internet, was Jochebed. Daughter of Levi and mother of Aaron, Miriam, and Moses. Wife of Amram as well as his aunt. No details are given concerning her life, which is very much in fitting with the Maude Flanders story.
Yeah, she fits pretty well. I speculated whether she did it on purpose or not, but I've ultimately decided probably not, because it doesn't seem like the best. It's a good alibi, I suppose, but there's easier ways, and I don't think she's a outright killer. She's
She ain't a stone cold killer, cold blooded.
no. The other note I made was that it's not. This is the only time that it's not Maggie Roswell. I think it says on the Simpsons wiki that it's Pamela Hayden doing the gasp and the cheering for Maude, which is she voices Rod, I think, and Millhouse, etc.
Okay.
So no Maggie Roswell. They didn't want to fly her out to just gasp and cheer.
Probably a wise decision.
Yes. I didn't realise, maybe it's just in this context, but I didn't realise how little I liked this scene until recently. Like, it's sort of wildly out of place. Like, Homer spoke to God before in like a dream sequence, but also God has done this similar thing before in the Mr. Plow one, where he sort of melts all the snow. Like, he responds to Homer, but not directly. Like, Homer doesn't hear the response. But this is just stupid.
Well, let's contextualize it. Maybe Flanders is projecting, and it's just a coincidence that lightning strikes the tree, and he is an unreliable narrator. There is that. This is again, I talk about Dan Harmon all the time, but he does that in Community all the time, where he'll have something absolutely ridiculous, and he'll somehow recontextualize it so that it still makes sense. Like when they're in space, or when they're doing the paintball kind of like Wild West thing. It's still ridiculous, but it just brings it back into the line of being like, okay, I still buy it in the Simpsons universe that maybe God didn't literally come down, but Ned imagined that or projected that onto that, and he was just damn lucky that lightning decided to strike at that point. Why are they making the movie?
There's a film festival in town. I checked, and Maude isn't present for the deciding about the film festival or the actual film festival, just the filming. But it didn't seem to go very well, so this is one of those occasions where it makes sense that she probably said, like, Todd nearly died, let's leave this.
Probably didn't do a second take.
No. But she also, like, none of them are shocked to see God, which would blend into the idea that Ned's sort of imagining it, because none of them are remotely surprised when God's hand comes down and speaks directly to them.
Yeah, I mean, you have Deus Ex Machina, right, which is a really cheap way to get out of any kind of trouble, but it doesn't often mean that literally. I mean, traditionally, it did literally mean the gods came down into the play arena, right? And but they don't really use it in that sense anymore. So this is like a literal Deus Ex Machina. He just comes down, he says, like, "I'm in trouble. Here you go. There you go, Ned." Yeah. But Ned, if Ned really had on call a god or the god, surely that's setting him up for some wild adventures. I'm just going to jump off this building now. God, make sure you come down and swoop down and save me. He's essentially got superpowers.
Yeah, and again, Ned prays. Maybe it was about the timing of it, but Ned prays and God saves Todd, but nobody's saving Maude when she falls. God just lets her go.
Yeah, and see, that would have been grim had he put in a prayer. But I mean, it's too short. It happened so soon that it wasn't. Nobody was ready for it. Whereas you got ample time to watch Todd for a little bit and then have a bit of a think and then say his prayer. So
yeah. But yeah, that's her only appearance in that episode. She doesn't return for the film festival or see football in the groin.
What do you think then? Given, all right, two things. You've already said that she didn't do it on purpose. Is she just stupid? Because you can see how fast a river is running. It's not rocket science. There's going to be, like, at that speed, there's going to be twigs and all kinds of stuff going past you. You might just test it out.
Yeah, it's not the brightest idea considering they're not the dumb family. So it's kind of stupid that none of them, especially given how cautious they are, that they decided to, unless the whole thing is part of the movie, and like a movie within a movie. So somebody else, let's say Ruth Powers, is filming all of this happen, and the God thing is added in post production.
A meta
And
movie.
that was
I don't think the Flanders are meta people, though.
no. It does just seem like they made a bad decision.
A very bad decision because they wrapped him up tight so he couldn't get out. Now, even in the story, that was supposed to happen because Moses' mother puts the basket in the river with the intention of it floating away so that it can get away from the king who's looking out for to murder all the firstborns, right? The Pharaoh. So it seems like the whole thing was really badly thought out, and once again, putting their children in direct danger for no good reason.
Yeah.
But in this case, purely so that they could get some recognition and some cash, I'm guessing. So even worse in some of the other instances.
I agree. Not very Flanders. They must have been having an off week.
An off week. Yeah. The existence of God proven. So if you are going to run with your theory, then I get Maude's opinion on it. If not, what's her belief that she saw Neddy? Let's go for the theory that nobody else other than Ned saw God's hand, and it was all in his head. What's Maude's reaction to Ned praying and then the tree immediately being hit by lightning and saving Todd? Because if it had been a second later, it would have crushed him, and he was in that basket tied up.
Right.
Tied up tightly, and not only is he going down the river, he's now been smashed in the face by a giant tree.
Yeah. I think she stayed calm the whole way through because I just think her faith is that kind of strong, and it's been rewarded once again. We say how unlucky they are, but they are quite lucky as well, in that the bad things that happen to them 9 times out of 10 get resolved. Even like now, like Ned seems to hang out with Maude's ghost pretty regularly. Like everything sort of comes back around to a place where they're sort of happy. So I think she just sort of saw it happen and was like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. I believed. And look, it did. Take that.
Take that and party.
Let's keep this mod train chuffing with the next episode, Season 6, Episode 19. Lisa's Wedding, a personal favorite of Zez's. Written by Greg Daniels of the American Office fame. Directed by Jim Reardon, who has probably also had other jobs. Aired March 19, 1995.
One of the more pivotal of all the clips, I think.
Definitely the saddest, and gives us some real food for thought, in a way. So we are looking at Lisa's future wedding. An alternative future, an alternate timeline? Who knows? You have to tell me, Nathan. So Homer is talking to his new in-laws to be and his son-in-law, a Hugh Grant style character. Is he played by Hugh Grant?
No, he's called Hugh though.
Oh.
He is Mandy Patinkin.
Oh, a lady.
No, don't be stupid.
What?
It's he's from Homeland.
He's a man.
He's a man.
His name is Mandy.
His name is Mandy, spelled the same.
I don't know him.
Yeah, from the Simpsons.
Oh, his name's Mandel. Mandel Bruce Patinkin.
I see. Great. Yeah.
All right, back onto the track. So the Hugh character nervously says, ha ha ha, Homer, laughing at something, and obviously Homer is going to embarrass himself greatly in front of these posh British parents. And we cut to the stalls of a theatre, and we see a delightful mid-70s, I'm guessing, Ned Flanders, looking quite sharp, although must be probably much older than I consider. He's already in his 60s at this point, right?
He's got to be like 90.
He's 90s, a very healthy-looking 90-year-old wrinkled Ned, stately and regal. Next to him, Maude Flanders. The hair a little less fiery, still rocking the blue eyeshadow, now with some very respectable spectacles. And then a chubby Patty and Selma sidle up behind them. And I've made a note, this is the saddest of all things, a future that will never be.
Yeah, the way around it is that it's a prophecy/vision that Lisa is presented with. So it was either, like some kind of vision she saw in a ball, or it was something she just imagined in her head. Because Edna is also in that clip at the wedding, old. So Maude and Edna both present when they cannot be. To make it sadder as well, Homer does like a very good job with the parents. Like his sort of like he can't get over the snobbery. Like the new guy, so Lisa says like go away. But Homer comes through and is very sweet and tries his best. And yeah, he still thinks he's a bit of a scrubber. So
those damn British snobs. It's like
yeah,
there was an Horses episode where Rodney tries to marry that lass. They all laugh at Del.
yeah, and the chandelier.
Yeah. Is it the same episode with the chandelier? The second clip in the history of British television.
After the one where he falls through the bar.
Exactly. After the one, the funniest clip in British television history.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's sort of a nice, sad, sort of like bittersweet look at what could have been. She looks, she just sort of looks, nothing radical's changed, but this is sort of just Lisa's imagination. The only one that's seemingly radically changed is Krusty. Like, Krusty looks really bad. Like, he's really fat and in a wheelchair. And nobody else has really changed that much. Also, this episode is set 13 or 14 years in the Simpsons' future, I think. But in our linear world timeline, it is set in 2010.
Oh.
Yeah, so it is a decade old.
Decade-old vision of the future. But that's happening in so many things now, isn't it? Like, Back to the Future 2 was set in like 2019 or something like that or whatever. And then comic 2000 AD. I was like, oh, when it was set in the late 70s, 2000 AD was the future.
Yeah.
Now we don't see.
Not so much. But yeah, they guessed a couple of things like a Skype call, a couple of kind of notable things that did end up happening. But not about Maude.
Skype was popular in 2010.
Well, the episode's from like 1995, I think.
Oh, yes. Don't get me wrong. I understand that they made a prediction, and it was a good one. But not this one. It was a bad one, because Maude Flanders, unfortunately, she's dead. Contractual negotiations fell apart. Maude died. And we will never get to see her looking as stately and as old as this, because for the rest of time, she's not going to age. Which, of course, is... Nobody else in Springfield is going to age either, so that's not as big a deal as you'd think it would be.
True, but she still has to not be a part of things. She just doesn't get to not age with everybody else. She has to not age on her own somewhere else.
Yes, in some kind of liminal zone, because obviously if she keeps popping back, she's not quite in heaven. We've talked about this before. But that's for the future, the real future. Anything else to say about that projected future?
No.
I got one other thing to say, and we talked today about The Simpsons tapped out and how it was an alternate timeline. You're classing this not as an alternate timeline, but more as a dream, a what if, yeah? Yeah,
I put this more as a vision rather than because sometimes they've been specific and said, like, this is just an episode set 10 years in the future. Whereas this is, Lisa goes to a psychic who says, would you like me to predict your future?
Yes.
So, bad psychic.
Bad psychic. Shut down for unforeseen irregularities.
That was a shorty. That's not what Maude said. On the home stretch, now fans, with Season 6, Episode 23, The Springfield Connection, written by Jonathan Collier, directed by Mark Kirkland, aired May 7th, 1995.
They are in a hair salon. We got Maude sitting there with curlers in her hair, and they got one of those big old-fashioned 50s style hair dryers on their head. She's sitting next to Luann Van Houten, Agnes Skinner, and Edna Krabappel, the Investorettes, as they will come to be known, but not yet. And over on the side, we have Helen Lovejoy getting her haircut. And they're kind of talking, but the joke is they can't hear each other because they're in their, they got these hair dryers over their heads. So Edna says that, I can't go to the library anymore because everybody stinks. And Agnes says, he said it was his day to use the tub pillow. Fair enough. Maude, and you pointed this out, this was weird. Maude says, I hope they have US magazine in heaven. Us magazine in heaven. I mean, she's not actually reading Us magazine. She's got a nondescript grey book in her hand, but I guess they could have put some kind of weird protective cover over it. But it's such a weird thing to be saying, right?
Yeah, she's yeah, I made a note about it being all the investorettes, and maybe this is the salon where that kind of group formed. Yeah, she's just it's weird. Yeah, she's talking about again, like I suppose they needed to give from a writing point of view. You've got these four characters. We're going to give at least three of them a line. Edna and Agnes are sort of guaranteed because they're the funniest. So it was sort of a toss up between Luann and Maude, and I think Maude has slightly more characterization than Luann, and they can say like, oh, let's just give her a line about church or God. There isn't anything. Luann maybe could have said something about Millhouse. Like her and Kirk aren't really too troubled at this point. So I think it just, from a logical point, it was.
Well, what she says is super weird and unnecessarily the others that I think the others are talking about troubles they've had and dramas they've had, and maybe Maud just doesn't have any troubles and dramas, and her main concern is whether she'll get her favorite magazine. Newsweek apparently her favorite magazine, but she obviously likes Us magazine and Celebrity Gossip, which I want to ask you about also. But she just brings up the idea that once again, death seems to stalk every conversation and every interaction. We've already had the first one where she almost kills her child. The second one where she's projected in the future where she can't possibly exist because she's dead. And then the third one, she brings up that her favorite magazine should be stocked at the pearly gates. What's going on?
And there is a secret fourth one that I considered putting in, but she isn't in, so I'm just going to tell you about it after this, after clip 4. Okay. But yeah, it's just sort of always on her mind. It's like they've sort of already decided subliminally there was some sort of desire to kill Maude Flanders, because this is like direct reference number 3 at least to Maude being dead or in heaven or something to do with like the other week when everybody thought she was dead, and there was one before that I can't place. But yeah, it's weird. She just sort of it's always on her mind. Like, yeah, Agnes is talking about a bath pillow incident with Skinner. It's also, you got Agnes next to Edna and Maude next to Edna, and Edna has dated both of the pivotal men in those two women's lives, or will go on to date. But just thought that was interesting to note.
Interestingly enough, like when they do animate it, Luann's chair and body disappears because you can see Agnes on one side, but on the other side, there's nothing there anymore. So Luann completely disappears from that conversation. But I wonder, like, when with the writers, if they did some research and they, kind of came across Maude, and maybe that planted the seed in their head that's how she should go, because they could have potentially written her out in other ways, right? They didn't have to go that dramatic, spoiler, when eventually she pops her clogs. But I just wonder if the amount of references to heaven and death just meant like, well, it seems obvious that this is what we would do.
Yeah, it's strange because, again, I don't think I should have quit. The idea of killing Maude would never have come up because they wouldn't have needed to, sort of have a reason for her to not be around, because Maggie Roswell would have still just been around. So it's a weird it's sort of like it was everything just sort of aligned, and they had this character who was seemingly very fascinated with death, eventually being one of the very few characters to die.
Yes. So what do you think that her take is on celebrity gossip? Because, it's all good and well that she's picked up the Us magazine garbage and she's flipping through it in the her salon, but for it to be one of the few things that she requires in heaven seems like it's plays a slightly bigger part in her life than ice water.
There's a potential that she's kind of just trying to be liked, like she's reading this magazine because it's there, and she sort of makes the assumption these other women like this magazine. So she's saying, "Oh, I really like this magazine too. I hope they have this in heaven.
Heaven's the best place ever, and so I must really like it if I want it to be in heaven."
Yeah. Or yeah, maybe she just really likes. Maybe she's got a particular celebrity she likes, and she likes to clip them the way that she clips Ann Landers.
Would you like to conjecture who that might be?
Somebody bland, somebody along the Donny Osmond kind of route. Osmond, an actor.
Yeah. He would be good. The Osmond, right? He's a Mormon, so I don't know if she would dislike him for that reason, but probably not. He's peachy clean. David Cassidy, all those 70s peeps that looked clean cut, but were they?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to lie and slander them here on air without proof. Yes.
Scum.
I think, let me pick up on that point then. Do you think, if she is trying to just fit in with these other ladies, and eventually it works because, they get bowling teams and investor groups and things, do you think that's something she does a lot? Is she trying to like weasel her way into friendship groups by, saying she likes stuff that she doesn't really? Peer pressure, giving into peer pressure.
I think maybe not. I think she's maybe just had a look around and thought, I don't really have many friends, so maybe she's, there are all 5 of them are there at the same time for some reason, so they've probably organised this in advance. So I imagine Maude is just, taking the chance to make friends and sort of get out of the Flanders house for a bit. And she sort of, we're basing it off, she's had Janice, she's had potentially Ruth Powers, she's had her maternal sort of, I imagine her mum was the loving one. So I think she just likes the influence of, sassy ladies. So she's
ladies.
Yeah, she's wanting to be around some friends as opposed to her husband and those 2 freaky kids.
Well, then what happens in a setup that could only really exist in somewhere like Springfield, Marge Simpson walks in and all of the chat stops. And she says, "Don't stop talking on account of me. I may be a cop, but I'm still your friend." Like, what? Are you a cop?
Yeah.
Obviously, that's the context of the episode. And this is a wacky and zany show. How can she be a cop when she went to prison only like a few episodes ago, but maybe she got let off? I'm not sure. Maude is looking tight-lipped with her eyes half closed. She ain't going to say no more of that giddy talk while this cop is around.
Yeah, weird, because I imagine Maude to be sort of respectful of authority. I don't think she's scared because she hasn't really done anything wrong. So I think this is just a case of she just doesn't like Marge. She's, she wants to make Marge just sort of feel bad. Because imagine, like, I don't know, if Ned became a police officer, I imagine it would make Maude very proud and happy. So it's weird that she doesn't look at Marge and think, oh, this is great, She's gone from criminal to prisoner in minimal time. Criminal to police officer. Just stirs her out.
Are the police prisoners of a system that's bigger than them? Oh, good Lord. Let's not get into that, Nathan.
No, too troubling.
I think she's pro-cop. I agree. I think she'd now be pro-cop. There's something about Maude, there's something about Marge being a police officer that makes all the other ladies not want to go tight-lipped. Because, none of them were particularly saying anything that would get anyone in trouble. You can't get in trouble for taking the tub pillow on the wrong day or for smelling in a library. None of those are criminal offences, even though they should be.
Marge at this point has already, as a cop, been to the Skinner house about the bath pillow in this episode because they both said it was their turn to use the bath pillow, and then they both called the police.
Domestic.
So I sort of think they're all. Well, it makes more sense for the likes of Edna, Agnes, even Luann, to be the idea that they've got some sort of shady, not necessarily illegal, but maybe like morally, that they don't want to bring up around a police officer. But Maude doesn't really fit into that category. Neither does Helen, really. But she just sort of, everybody else has been quiet. She's already trying to make an impression. She isn't going to be the one that says, like, oh, hi, Marge, come and sit with us. She doesn't like her that much.
Yeah, and the irony in some ways is the only person she's ever got in trouble to such an extent they might go to jail is Marge Simpson. So I don't know if Maude's really got anything to worry about, but as we said before, maybe she's just, solidarity with these other sisters that might have some more shady business going on. I wouldn't be surprised if Edna Krabappel's got some gin in her bathtub or something like that.
Yes.
So, still in the same place. They're still in the hair salon, and for no good reason that I can understand, Marge drops and rolls does a forward roll across the floor, whips out a pistol, points it at Helen and Mo, who's also in there getting his hair done, and the two hairdressers, who gasp with their arms aloft. Maude and Koa sat behind where Marge is, and they also put their hands up with a shocked look on their face. Maude Flanders has a very shocked look. She slowly lowers her arms as Marge laughs and puts away the gun and says, "Ooh, that looks nice. It's a good length for you." And
Yeah,
Edna's gun is something I noticed as well.
I didn't notice that. That's weird. Inconsistent. The chair drops and it sounds like a gunshot. So Marge is trying to, protect everybody, but she's just sort of in. The point is she's trying to say, like, I'm still your friend. I'm not a cop, but she can't escape the sort of police mode. But again, it's weird. I get that they all put their hands up in kind of fear, but surely they would be like, oh, like, we appreciate that you were looking out for us. But they sort of, again, they're treating her like some kind of freak when she's doing something pretty upstanding and sort of, pretty unlike Marge, pretty commendable, sort of like brave and out of the house and doing it for herself sort of situation. And yeah, nobody is cheering her on.
Yeah, she's out there. She's done something, and they would have thought made her an upstanding citizen, but she's been a little bit pushed out of the group. However, if you are going to whip out your pistol and fire, point it at people at the drop of a noisy pin, you're not going to win many friends. So I'm kind of with them on that. If I had a friend who was a police officer and they pulled that kind of shenanigans, I think I'd probably have a word with them and say, yeah, you might want to maybe whip out your mace or your nightstick first before you go for the Smith and Wesson in your pocket.
You don't win friends with bullets.
You don't. And so Maude wasn't, again, in direct danger there, but what must she have been thinking about this situation?
Well, maybe, and I'd like to keep an eye on this for the next couple of episodes, is maybe this was sort of the wake-up call, how she's been after this sort of rush of adrenaline or whatever, this sort of like the sort of near-death experiences or like the car chases and stuff. Maybe this was sort of enough for her to be like, because she heard what she thought was a gunshot, and then the next thing you know, somebody's aiming a gun in the room. So maybe after this, it sort of calmed her down a bit, and she was like, I've had my fill. I'm happy to go back to being, like just living my normal life. That's sort of what I think may have happened. The other possibility is that we just said, she got Marge sent to prison. So there's always the idea that she's got it in the back of her head that Marge now, as a police officer, will try and seek revenge in some way and get Maude sent to prison or shoot her in the head.
You're in the back of the head in a dark alleyway. A corrupt Marge Simpson, the most corrupt of cops.
Yes.
Worm in the apple.
But yeah,
it's the second time in this clip that death has reared its head. Not directly, but of course, a loaded gun being fired at people. It's not your average situation. It's definitely danger.
Yeah, and then the direct scene after this that I was going to include, but it was just a bit too long and sort of not. It was indirectly related to Maude. His Homer then steals some of Marge's police caution tape and tapes up the Flanders drive. So when Flanders gets home, he drops to his knees or something and says something horrible's happened. And then Homer comes out in fits of laughter saying I fooled you, I made you think your family was dead. And just continues to laugh as Ned stands next to him trying to process that everything's sort of fine and nobody's died and how could someone make this kind of joke. And eventually Homer just kind of bullies Ned into laughing along and saying, that was a good one. So the next scene is about, again, Ned thinking that Maude has somehow been brutally killed inside the house.
It's relentless. It is relentless.
Especially this week.
So, is that it? You want to move on from content, or you got any more to say about those clips?
No, all good.
Those were fun. I think we gave them their time in the sun there, and let's move on.
We're in the end game now. Season 6, Episode 24. Lemon of Troy. Written by Brent Forrester. Directed by Jim Reardon. Aired May 14th, 1995.
Kids wandering around a town. This looks like Shelbyville. We see Nelson, we see Rod with that nerd who has the big glasses on. You're saying it's Todd. Are you saying it's Todd? Okay.
Todd.
I will defer to the expert on this one. Todd walking with that glasses nerd kid. Barton Millhouse. We cut to Flanders standing on his lawn. Got Ned, Maude, Homer, Marge, the Van Houtens, and maybe the glasses parents. I don't know. There's like 3 or 4 people I don't know. They're all excited and clamoring in this kind of nervous way, except for Maude, who is stood absolutely stony still, doesn't blink, doesn't move a muscle. She just has this fierce kind of neutral look on her face. Once again, their kids are in dire danger. Ned says he called the police chief in Shelbyville, who hasn't seen the kids, but if they turn up at the morgue, they will fax them. Anyone give a shit about the kids? That's kind of like generally the theme that's running through this.
Doesn't seem so. I've got a few notes. First of all, yeah, it's Todd, and we're still in that time of Todd being more prominent than Rod, or them being like separate characters. I don't know, again, we'll too late this, so I'll put it in the bio, but I don't know who wrote this episode, but the selection of kids is very weird, and I like it. It's like that kid's called Database with the glasses and ears. I think he's Matt Groening's least favourite character of all time. I quite like him. I'm guessing the guy stood next to Maude is his dad, because there's a similar sort of look, but we'll look at that in the Database cast. So it's weird that Todd's out on this adventure in the first place. Like, they sort of play on him being the churchy one. Don't know where Rod is. Rod's possibly not in this episode at all. Rod's not a part of things. I didn't know Maude was in it until I was doing this, to be honest. I did always kind of wonder, like, because Ned goes and helps Homer and stuff, but Maude not really got a role. She's not responding to the idea that Todd could show up in the morgue either. She's not
responding to any stimulus. It's almost like she's catatonic. She doesn't blink or move while they're all having this discussion around her. And it's not even like, well, at least Rod's safe, so let's make sure we go find Todd. It's just like no response whatsoever. It's absolutely bonkers. What's going through her mind?
I'd like to speculate that she possibly like an unseen side adventure where, Maude and Rod were doing something in the house a bit earlier than this, and not purposefully, but through her own fault, Rod's got hurt somehow. He's sprained his arm or something. So Rod, I like the idea that Maude is stood here catatonic because she knows that although Rod is safe, she still has to tell Ned that she's hurt him, and Todd might be in the morgue.
Things are looking bad, and so you would see that there's the fight, flight, or freeze response, right? And Maude's clearly in this state in the freeze response. She's just essentially reached such a level of stress with this that week after week, either she or her children are in absolute mortal danger. And at this point, I think she just got some like PTSD stuff, and she just essentially shut down.
Yeah, seems that way, but it doesn't continue on throughout the scene because she does display some emotions.
Oh yeah, like with the next little bit of the clip, she actually goes bonkers. So let's move on to that. So Homer is like having enough of this. He punches his fist and he shouts, "There's something we can do." And he gets Marge and he goes, "Come on, everybody, let's go to Shelbyville and get those kids back ourselves." Maude, there's a little bit of a turn of the head, now a slight response, something's shaking her, but still stone cold, statuesque. Homer says, "I've got an RV we can use." Flanders is, and he points to this big, this caravan truck, motorhome, and this finally is what spurs Maude into frantic action, and she claps very, very fast like a seal. Like her arms are together, and she's clapping like 1,000 claps a minute, and that just got me. I was like, what's going on with Maude? She just sprung into frantic action, and where did the RV come from? And that got me thinking about Maude as a driver. Does she drive? And how would she handle an RV?
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen her drive, but I like to imagine that she can. Probably not the RV though. Maybe too much for her. None of the wives go with them. Like Maude isn't the only one sort of in this situation, but she's sort of it's weird that she just starts cheering up on. Maybe she didn't want this RV because it has to have come recently. Because this is the first time we've ever seen it. So maybe Ned again, a bit too impulsive, bought it, and now she's thinking, well, if Homer destroys it, we can probably get some money on the insurance for that, and it's a win-win for Maude. But yeah, she's no interest in going helping Todd herself. But there's sort of a little arc we could run through this if we really tried. In that when Marge shot the gun in the hairdressers, it sort of shut Maude down or put her on this train of thought that sent her into this catatonic state of like not being herself in this dark path that eventually led her on to shoot Mr. Burns.
I like this hole you're digging. Previously, you could argue that her response to danger was like a mental flight. So she didn't actually run away from danger, but she essentially just ignored it and somehow managed to bypass it. And so it's essentially the same as kind of like running away, but now she's hit this point. And I think she gets over it quickly, but I'm sure we'll see her again soon in danger. She doesn't seem to ever stray very far from me. But I think you're building up some clues that say that maybe in a Jack the Ripper style reveal, the actual murderer of Mr. Burns, although he doesn't die, is Maude Flanders. This is what you're pitching for right now, isn't it?
Possible. There's not strong evidence saying that she didn't do it, other than him, saying it was Maggie. But there's ways around that too.
Tell us of those ways.
Yeah, there's a theory online that he said that it was Marge, and because of his previous interest in Marge, he didn't want to rat Marge out, so he said Maggie. And it's still semi-possible that he has a secret. He's filming her. He could have some kind of secret like for Maude and think the only person I can really send down here is the baby. But again, there was a lot of other things like Simpson DNA, etc., that hinders the idea. But again, we can't let that stand in the way of this podcast.
Exactly. I want to know what's going on with that clapping, because that's mad.
Yeah, again, she's too excitable for the situation at hand, which makes me think that she's in somewhat of a dream state, that she's just sort of moving through this episode without reacting to it, which isn't out of character.
No, it's like some traumatic series of events happened that meant that she just couldn't react to dangerous or uncomfortable situations with any kind of reality or honesty. She always just greets them with a smile or with a visit to her happy place and ignoring it.
Yeah, or again, that she doesn't particularly want this RV and she's kind of cheering on the ultimate destruction of that, which I don't think happens. I don't think anything bad happens to the RV.
So we never see it again?
Yeah, they sort of have the rest of the adventure in Shelbyville with it, and then Ned shouts, "Eat all of our shirts."
I thought that was Skinner.
Maybe. No, Skinner says something about eating shorts at some point, but I'm pretty sure Ned says, yes, eat all of our shirts.
Yeah, I don't know where they parked that RV, to be honest.
No, there isn't any space, so they must have some kind of, like parking lot somewhere that they leave it, maybe like an RV lot, and it's secure there until it's necessary, and maybe the Flanders were planning on using it for personal reasons, but didn't get around to that because Homer took it. But again, maybe it's just new and they haven't thought about parking it. They could park it easily on the drive if they put the car in the garage.
For the rest of eternity, and we don't, so who knows?
Maybe it'll make a return, but I don't think so.
Well, maybe we'll find out in Maude's diary. Who knows? Maybe Maude made an entry on what happened to the RV and why it so suddenly appeared and then so suddenly disappeared. Maybe she had a hand in it. Maybe she put the foot in. Maybe the foot has spoken, and that's why, as quickly as Neddy impulsively bought it, he sadly took it back to the RV dealer and traded it in for a right-handed car, not a left-handed RV.
Maybe she put her foot down in the car and drove it into a river.
I mean, I'd like to think that Maude could be trusted more than that, but to be honest, who knows what kind of devious and psychotic acts she gets up to off camera. We only see her at her most reasonable.
I agree. We see her at her best.
We do. We see, even when she's at her worst, we see her at her best.
You made it. It's the last episode of the season. Season 6, Episode 25. Who Shot Mr. Burns? Part 1. Written by Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein. Directed by Jeffrey Lynch. Relation? Aired May 21st, 1995.
Smithers, looking ravaged, all messed up, holding a bottle of liquor in the town hall by the looks of it and saying, "Mr. Burns was the closest thing I had to a friend." Maude is sat like 2 rows down, 2 seats down from him, like stone cold again, not moving a muscle. What's got into her? Like, my note is, what's got into her recently? Doesn't even turn her head as Smithers is going on about losing the best friend he ever had. Like, not a flicker of emotion from Maude. Not even if you'll just just turn your head, nothing.
No, and I didn't notice. Maybe I don't know if the people around him turn their head, but I think a couple of them do. But
Not, in fact, nobody blinks or moves, and that doesn't move. I mean, we could break the kayfabe and say it's, lazy animators, but to be honest, it's bizarre because, like, I think there's 15 people in the scene and one of them blinks like once, and the rest of them just sit there with no change of expression.
There's a possibility that nobody really cares about Smithers either because he's the lackey of. He's sort of worse than Burns in a way because he doesn't have the at least Burns is creatively evil. Smithers is just sort of the one who gets things done for him.
Exactly.
So people probably don't really care for Smithers anyway, but at this point he's sort of done the right thing and turned against Burns after he's wanted to take candy from a baby and all that stuff. I think this meeting's about the fact that he's sort of just ruining the town, like with the oil that they kind of found. And
that makes sense. I was thinking that he was crying because Burns had been murdered, but no, he's fine because Burns has turned into this like super evil monster, right?
Yeah, and then fired him.
This is the scene where I think Janice Rubler pops up. So if you look at your phone, you've sent me a picture, and the picture is my screenshot of a woman who sat just in front of groundskeeper Willie, who I would like to think is Janice Rubler.
I can be on board with that. Yeah, she has a similar look to young Hubler, even though I just drew a white Janie.
You did draw a variation on Janie, but this, if we did accept that this was Janice Rubler, then we've got Ruth Powers, Janice Rubler, Laurie Goodman, and they're all Maude supporters. Did you have another character earlier that I've forgotten? Did you mention someone?
Sarah Wiggum.
Sarah Wiggum, of course, her cousin, maybe her cousin.
Yeah, potentially.
Bart's dog comes into the town hall. He's got that kind of like those kind of that plastic kind of a funnel thing around his head, and his back wheels are in a trolley, kind of like so they can't use them. They're all bandaged up, and Maude's looking on in mild concern at this dog coming down the aisle, but she's got good posture as always. We cut to Bart, Maggie, Lisa, Marge, Skinner, and Agnes, and two women that I've never seen before. The dog comes mournfully down the aisle, and we hear a familiar chortle at the door. Maude's got her arms folded, and she turns with a kind of haughty, kind of like annoyed look on her face to seize Mr. Burns. And I comment, does she still like him? Is there still something in her where she's still giving him, after all these times, the benefit of the doubt? Burns clasps his hands together. Oh, those wheels are squeaking a bit. Perhaps I can sell him some oil. The dog growls. Bart shouts, "You twisted old monster," and runs for Burns. We get a vague approximation of Maude looking on, basically just a scribble, like a Maude scribble. Burns wags his finger, opens his jacket up to present a gun. Over Bart's shoulder, we see the sea captain and Maude with very goofy eyes, like her head has been like spun around and her eyes have been popped out. Burns says, "I've decided to protect myself since I was attacked by an unknown assailant." And we hear Homer shout, "No!"
Yeah, Burns has certainly kicked things up a notch from being kind of generally evil anyway, but he's actively he blew up the treehouse by accident, which led Tanner's little helper to end up in a wheelchair. And then he's just openly laughing at this crippled dog in front of the town and offering to sell some of the oil that he's just stolen from half of the people at the meeting, and then threatens the same 10-year-old with a gun. Sideshow Bob would be happy with these shenanigans, but he's in jail. Maude, I do think that, again, it just sort of leads into Maude deciding to shoot Mr. Burns, but I still think at this point, like, she's heard the stories, but we've not really seen her around him doing anything particularly bad. So she's heard the stories, but everything that she's seen of him has been pretty good. So until this point, I still think she thinks people are maybe giving him a rough time, and that, he can't be truly evil. And then this is the first time she's sort of seeing that he is maybe outmatching her in hatred of this town.
Yeah, so maybe this is kind of like, we do know that Maude can flip on a sixpence, so maybe this is like, she's been giving him the benefit for a while. At the beginning, she really liked him when he bought the car from the Leftorium and was generally looked like a nice chap, but little by little she's soured, and now this is flipped. Now this is psychotic Maude has decided to take things into her own hands. It's certainly, in the grand scheme of whodunits, it certainly would be a twist, because other than standing directly behind the sea captain as he threatens her, Burns, she plays no part in this whatsoever. It certainly would be a turn up for the books.
But isn't that just like her to dip in and out before the action happens?
Yes, maybe the mob fired her up. She went there, did it, and then she was back in time to stuff her face with some ice cream and do some knitting before tea.
But it's the perfect alibi of everybody in town, sort of. If they have this impression of, oh, you know what Maude Flanders is like, she'll come to the meeting, but she won't hang around. So the fact that she isn't around afterward is sort of, character traits have sort of done her a favour there, in that she could make an exit and it wouldn't be weird.
Nobody would suspect a single thing.
Nobody suspects the butterfly.
Exactly. The modeler did it.
Yes.
Alrighty, so this is all still part of the same clip here. This is the last straw for the town, and they turn on Burns, Apu, Skinner, Sideshow, Mel, Otto, and the sea captain. And the sea captain leaps to his feet and shouts, Burns, your scurvy schemes will earn you a one-way passage to the boneyard. And he does the slitting of the throat thing. And Maude, and this is really weird, I've never seen it happen in any episode before, Maude is directly behind him. So, as he turns his head, you can just see bits of Maude's face and head. I've never seen them do that anywhere else where there's another character directly behind the main one for no good reason. It serves no purpose, and it must have just made things way harder.
I think it's a continuity sort of. I think even though Maude seems to, if you watch the scene as a whole, where Maude and Ned are sat, sort of changes every time they cut out to do like a slightly worse drawn pan across the room. Maude and Ned are really close to the front, but then when they're needed, they're at the back. And I think it's just every time the sea captain speaks, Maude and Ned are in the background for it. So I just imagine they were Maude's still supposed to be knocking about, but it is weird that she's probably just because he's bigger as a character, but just directly in front of you. You can't see her at all until he moves.
Yeah,
it is strange.
For her, see bits of her behind his head as he's moving. It's a weird choice.
And then Ned says my favourite Ned line for a while, which is I'd like to hear from Sideshow Mel.
Yeah, I wrote this one down. I liked it as well. It says, great line, kind of weird. Ned just says, I'd like to hear from Sideshow Mel. And then we do hear from Sideshow Mel, right?
Yeah, just needed to push the plot forward clearly. And Ned was the character next to the sea captain, so it could have been Maude, but Ned got the... And it is sort of funnier that Ned says it for some reason, probably because he's more established.
So Maude's seen his violence once again in front of her. And what's her take on it now? Because she seems now she's no longer in that kind of breeze state. She seems she's the only one, her and Ned are the only ones that don't have angry looks on her face. They have this kind of worried kind of look, but it's not angry.
I think she's taking in the situation. I think she's observing things, and if we are running with this theory that she's going to shoot him, I imagine she's just taking in what's happening at this point. She's noting how many people are becoming angry. I don't think this was in the clip, but Merc Quimby's already noted how many people are stroking guns. So she's I think this is her just quietly piecing the idea together that she's going to be the one to take this guy down, and probably let Homer take the fall for it.
Ideally, that would be great, wouldn't it, if she could send the other one to prison as well?
Yep.
But do you think that's more of a twist? So the big twist was that Maggie did it. Do you think if it then turned out it was a double twist of Maude, is that more of a twist or less of a twist?
I think it's less in real world context because it's just not exciting enough. It's sort of a cop-out twist, whereas Maggie, at least it kept things... It was somebody that you couldn't just guess, because they had a competition where if you guessed who did it, you won a prize. And I think only one person guessed Maggie.
Really?
And it's easy enough to be that person on the internet who goes, oh, I bet it was, Miss Hoover. Because, so I don't think it would have worked. It works well here because she's one of the sole focuses of this podcast.
Yes. So we're not just the internet person that's saying, oh, I bet Maude could have done it. We're better than that.
Yeah, we spent 18 weeks leading up to the idea that she could have done it.
We got a podcast, and therefore that makes it more important than someone who's just on Twitter.
Yes, just better.
Better all around. Clip 5. So Burns is holding a remote, and he says, you ever see the sun set at 3 p.m? The sea captain shouts, aye, when I was sailing around the Arctic. Burns shouts, shut up, you. As I said, everyone looks angry except for Maude, who looks worried. Ned's got kind of a neutral look on his face, maybe worried, but Maude looks actually worried. But Homer's snarling, Marge, Apu, Mo, and Burns says, take one last look at the sun. We just get a snatch of Maude's take on this. The darkest, literally the darkest hour in Simpsons
since history so far. And
she's sort of, I don't think she likes what's happening because it's chaos that's out of her control. Usually when the chaos is happening around her, it's to do with, like, it's the car in the car chase, etc. Whereas this is something she has no, she can't do anything about this, and she doesn't know what's going to happen from it. But I think this is the sort of time when she's making the decision, like, yeah, I'm gonna put an end to this guy. Because moments later, Krusty runs in and says, like, "Hi, what have I missed?" And it shows everybody looking angry, Ned included, I think, but Maude is no longer present.
Where's Maude gone? A segment that we discontinued after one episode of Where's Maude, but in this case, it could be of absolute importance at solving this crime. It's 25 years old.
That's all I have to really say about it. She's observing things at this point. Is this the last clip?
It's the last clip.
Well, I'll just keep delving into this theory of what she did next after this clip ends, because it goes on for another couple of minutes. He goes around the back, takes the lolly from Maggie, gets shot, is his version of things, but there's always the option that he was taking the lolly from Maggie. Maude approaches, he says, "Oh, you, blah, blah, blah." She pops one in him, hurls the gun into the car, knowing that Homer will touch it at some point, and does one, but she's back in time. She's not in this episode again, but she is. Spoilers, she appears in the background of the news when Mr. Burns is being taken to hospital at the start of part 2.
Which we will pick up at the beginning of season 3. Very interesting. We've got something akin to a cliffhanger. So not only in that part 2 are we looking for Maude, but we're also looking for clues that Maude committed this most heinous of crimes. Though, to be honest, Burns deserved it. Not that I'd say that lightly.
We can, this season 3 Maude-cast will definitively answer the question, did she do it? There's the sell. There's the hard sell.
So that's it for our content this week. Anything you want to tell these good people before we move on?
No, I think that's it. I think I'm going to rewatch this Mr. Burns episode with fresh eyes, because I was, for the most part, riffing with that. I think if I go back and watch it, I can probably thinly connect some more clues together.
Well, I hope so. Get that detective hat out, Sherlock, and get on your bike and ride. Not to mix metaphors.
That's it for season 6 of Maude. I have nothing more to say to you. Abrupt goodbye.